Speaker's not working, bro.
The voice can still,
Some was. Which speaker is that? We're all speaking.
all right. We are recording. We do have 2 minutes yet before we can start the meeting. 2 more minutes yet before we can start.
Got it. Can you all hear me okay?
We can. Can you hear us?
Yes.
Excellent.
Good on the sheet.
And I wasn't at the last one.
Nope.
Where were we? Makes me crazy. I can't.
Yes.
Well, it won't allow me to, I got the surface mouth and everything, and it won't allow me to hook anything up.
Really?
Yeah. Let's see.
Okay, I'm showing 6:30. We will call the Orinoco Planning and Zoning Commission meeting together. In order here, call it to order at 6:30 PM. And we'll start with roll call. Commissioner Wendy Phillips, Chair, is absent. I, Commissioner Kathy Brandt Rucker, Vice Chair, am here. Commissioner Colleen Fried, Secretary, here. Commissioner Jim Richards,
Here,
Commissioner Jim Phillips, we know he would be absent tonight as well. Commissioner Scott Sorensen. Commissioner Paul Pendergrass.
Here.
Excellent. And then we will see if staff are present. It does not appear that we have Consulting City Planner Phil Carlson from Stantec. Consulting City Engineer Joe Palin from Stantec.
Dana is in the.
Perfect.
And I'm standing in for Phil this
Okay,
evening.
and if you want to give us your name for the.
Sure.
How that as well?
Sure. My name is Erin Perdue. The last name is Perdu. And I'm the planning group leader at Stantec out of our Minneapolis office.
Thank you. And our Consulting City Engineer Joe Palin, also from Stantec, is not currently here. And our City Administrator Sunny Jortland Schultz. Here, just walked in, so we are there. So thank you, Erin.
Mhm.
So next thing on the agenda is our approval of the agenda. And we do have the agenda that was emailed out to us. I do have a couple things just to add under old business. A repeat from prior months, posting of the minutes of the planning and zoning meeting to the website. Add that under old business. And maybe we can add that after we get the update on their RFP. So if we could make that number 2 and bump the other couple down there to 3 and 4.
So you want the posting of the minutes as 2 or the,
As number 2 under old business, yeah.
right, okay.
Posting of the minutes of the planning and zoning meeting to the website.
So make that number 2.
Yep, make that 2.
Then the discussion is number 3.
Discussion 3. Discussion of the flute map would be 4. Then I do also want to officially put it on there under old business, just zoning packets. And then also that would be number 5, and then the last one would be zoning contact information. Does anybody have anything else to add or amend on the agenda?
I'm sorry, number 5 was going to be,
Zoning packets?
thank you.
Mhm. And yep, and number 6 would be zoning contact information. Thank you. Does anybody else have any changes or additions to the agenda?
I will just note that, Commissioner Sorensen had contacted me, so that was an excused one.
I'm trying, okay, here, mine finally open.
So if there are no other, any changes for the agenda?
It's not, do we have an RFP update?
That is number 1 under
Yeah,
old
there
business. Yep.
Okay.
Any other changes? I would entertain a motion to approve the agenda.
I make a motion, we approve the agenda as stated.
I'll second it.
Thank you, and
I should say with
As
updates as stated.
amended.
As amended.
as amended, all in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Okay, the agenda is approved. Now we come to approval of minutes for August 10th, 2023. And I did start going through and reviewing the minutes. I like to try and look at the YouTube to just check what's out there. That's gonna be my new. And thank you for getting it out there, but the 4-hour meeting actually got posted just today to YouTube, so we didn't have that available to look at until this afternoon. So if it's, I don't know if we want to go through and look at this and approve them as they are, or if we'd feel more comfortable next month approving 2 sets of minutes. And I would be comfortable leaving them in the draft format, but still posting them to the website so the community is aware of what's going on.
Sure.
But certainly.
Post the drafts
Mhm.
as there.
Actually, I know Orinoco Township and the county both post their full planning packets, agendas, as well as draft minutes also show up. And I've seen some other cities around here do the same thing, so.
Yeah, so yeah, it's, doesn't matter that, as long as everybody realizes it's unofficial.
That it's, yeah, that it's right.
Unofficial notes, minutes, you know.
So I don't know if we need to approve posting of the draft minutes for now, knowing that they would be updated if we need to actually vote on that as well.
Well, that probably come underneath discussion of uploading planning and zoning minutes
Yeah.
under old business, right?
Mhm.
So if you're okay, we could delay approval of the August minutes to next month's agenda.
I'm okay with that. Do we need a motion?
I would take a motion for that, sure.
Okay.
You would do a motion to table.
What?
You would do a motion to table them to
okay.
next week.
So I make a motion to table approving the minutes. And do we have to make a motion to post the minutes as draft?
Yeah.
Okay.
Can we do that all in one motion? Or
Can we do, yeah, I'm assuming we could, all in one motion?
But we could certainly, if you want to do 2
I
separate,
can
we
do
can.
2 separate.
Well, have we approved that we're gonna be posting the drafts, or is that something that we're talking about under old
Well,
business?
we can do it right now on at least the August ones to get them out there.
I will tell you, my preference is always to post approved minutes. Because once you put, I'm always concerned about putting misinformation out or unofficial statements out to the public. If it's until they've been approved. It's kind of like, you know, in the newspaper. It's always, you know, the news is page 1, the retraction or correction is page 10. So that's just always been my practice, and I know from speaking with colleagues, that's their preference as well. Particularly when we have, these meetings are always available by Zoom if people want to.
Well, they're available by
Yeah.
Zoom, but even last
And-
month wasn't available till today.
And that is, that was a human error and, once you brought it to my attention, it got fixed, so. And, you know, now the process is, once those things are posted, they need to be checked and make sure that the proper, correct thing got posted.
I guess I wouldn't have a post and draft, but just label them as
You can
draft.
very clearly put a watermark over the top that says draft.
I'll make a second to
Okay.
do that.
Can you just read that back one more time to make sure we
Okay.
got the motion
So-
right?
The motion would be to table the approval of the minutes. So I'd say that we can just split them up.
Okay, so the first motion is to table
Yep.
approval of the August minutes to next month's.
To next month's meeting.
And allow them to be posted as a draft. Is that what you're
So
saying?
yeah, we could do that and allow them to be posted as currently are posted until then as a draft.
And it's,
And
you're
I'll
good with the
second
second on that one? Okay. So we do have a motion on the table to table approval of the August minutes during today's meeting and to move that to the October meeting for approval, but also at the same time approving posting draft minutes to the website. Any discussion? Okay, all in favor of the motion?
Aye.
Aye. Colleen?
I'll abstain. I really don't care. So what I have here is the motion to table the approval of the August 10th, 2023 minutes until the October meeting and allow them to be posted as a draft to the website.
And it's not talking about today's minutes, it's talking about the ones that are
Yes,
just in our.
yeah.
And do we need to say anything? Oh,
And so we
how
did,
do we determine, so maybe we post draft right in the title?
you
I
can
think we put a
watermark over the
watermark
top.
on it.
Okay.
Okay. And we do have our first public hearing of the evening. Posted for 6:35 or shortly thereafter, so we are shortly thereafter. You're at,
I'm correct. I could interrupt, so your vote was a yes?
my vote was
So,
a yes.
okay, so 3-1.
And I'm just gonna note that a watermark will be included.
Yep. And let's see, so our first public hearing of the evening. We're gonna start this at 6:41 p.m. We'll open the public hearing for the CUP application for home business at 115 Fifth Street Southwest. C subdivision 151.062 in the ordinance. Applicant is Shannon Rampton. Adam exec property owner. And we do not have anybody in the room for public comments on this. But we still do need to call 3 times to see if there's anybody who would like to publicly comment. And is there anybody in the Zoom room to be admitted? I have not heard it.
think I admitted Dana.
There's, yep, I don't know that I see anybody else. There.
Aaron, were you prepared to speak to any of that or, okay, so if you.
Yes, I can.
Thank you.
So we will close. Well, calling the first time, is there anyone that would like to speak for or against the application? Is there second time? Is there anyone that would like to speak for or against the CUP application for home business? And the last one, Is there anybody who would like to speak for or against the CUP application for home business at 115 Fifth Street Southwest? Okay, we will close the public hearing at 6:43.
If you just asked to cancel an alarm, there are none set at the moment.
I don't know what that was.
What's that?
Sorry, I think that was my smart speaker. So ignore that.
Welcome, Aaron. Are you here to give the staff report then for Stantec?
Yes, I can do that. Thank you. So this request is for a property owner who wishes to conduct a home occupation in a portion of the basement of an existing home. The proposed occupation is for a hair salon and a crafts and t-shirt making business, again, in a portion of the basement. The staff report contains the highlights of your review criteria and our recommendation. The key to the regulations relating to home occupations are to minimize the external impacts of business that are not normal for a residential neighborhood. And so the code criteria address those, and I'll give the highlights. First of all, the business has to be incidental and secondary to the primary residential use of the property, and that there should be no changes made to the exterior of the home. To our knowledge, the applicant is not proposing any changes to the exterior, and the size of the occupation is definitely smaller and incidental to the use as a residence. As far as allowable uses for home occupation, your code does list beauty parlors and arts and crafts studios, which are what is being proposed here. Regarding floor area, your code requires that no more than 25% of the floor area of the home be used for the home occupation. There is some question and some lack of detail in the application as to exactly the area that will be used for the home occupation and the total area of the home. So one of the conditions that we're recommending is that the applicants need to verify the total area of the home and the portion of the business so that we can confirm that it's less than 25%. There are no apparent noxious, combustible, or explosive materials that will be used here in this operation. Your code requires that no parking be allowed in front of the house except in the driveway. As I mentioned before, there are no exterior modifications being done to the home, so that does meet your code requirement. The same thing with outside storage of materials. There's none proposed here. The code does allow for a sign that is no more than 4 square feet. So we would add that to the conditions of approval. Only the resident owner and one other person may conduct the business. So that would be another condition to add. Truck traffic is limited to no more than 6 a day. And finally, the home occupation may only be operated as long as the owner continues to reside there. So the CUP for the home occupation is not transferable to a new owner or a new tenant or a different owner of the business. And with that, our recommendation is for conditional approval for the conditional use permit at 115 Fifth Street Southwest, and with the following conditions. Again, that no other business is allowed at this address unless a new or amended CUP is granted. That before issuing the permit, the applicant verify the total square footage of the home and the area that will be used for the home occupation so that we can verify that it's less than 25%. And that the applicant verify that all other conditions relating to home occupations be met. And those are the things like the signage, the truck traffic, and outdoor storage. And we've supplied some findings of fact that you may use if you choose to approve. And also the standard language that a conditional use is presumed to be a permitted use if the conditions in the code are met. And so the only reason to deny it would be if there were unusual or extreme characteristics And we don't see those here in this, with this application. And I'd be happy to take any questions that you have.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
I do have a couple of questions.
Sure.
Doing a hair salon, doesn't she have to follow some health department guidelines, stuff like that? So she'd have to have a health inspection of some type to do hair,
The state licenses that,
okay?
so she would be
Clarifying
inspected.
it. Now, does the sign have to be attached or is that in the yard or?
I don't think there's a requirement. Yeah, go ahead.
Signage is separately listed in the code. So she would have to follow that
I
section.
know it's 4 square feet, but I couldn't remember if it had to be attached or if it was standing all by its lonesome out the end of the driveway.
And if she applies for a sign and it meets the code, we won't see it here at zoning.
We shouldn't.
No,
Yeah.
we should not see that. If she decides she wants something outside of what's allowed by the code, then we'd see her back here again as another application.
Now, are there any issues in terms of, like water and sewer or septic sizes or anything like that, that we would have to be aware of? That you guys know of? I know in other cities, I don't think they're.
I'm not aware of one for that. If it was like a car wash, there would certainly be water and sewage concerns.
Yeah.
To make sure that it would be built up and appropriate for that level.
Right,
But you wouldn't have that as a home business.
No,
no,
That'd be a commercial.
yep.
Okay.
Good questions? Any other questions?
No, there's a couple that I had for the sign and
Does everybody feel about the 3 conditions that were written there for approval? And thank you very much for reading those out for us, Aaron. If those 3 conditions for approval are appropriate, or if anybody has any other changes or additions to the finding of fact for approval. If not, I would certainly entertain a motion to approve or deny.
I make a motion that we approve the conditional use permit. Let me get my document.
We just basically want the condition from Santa.
Based on the conditions listed in our packet
Yeah.
and the findings of fact for approval from our packet, those same, so 3 conditions and the 4 findings of fact.
So I make a motion that we approve based on the finding of facts and the 4 conditions, did we say?
Nope, 3.
There are 3 conditions. Included in the Santec packet.
Is there a second? If I'm following this correctly, you're making a motion for approval of the CUP for the first public hearing based on the 3 conditions for approval and the findings of fact for approval. Is there a second?
Second it.
Okay, thank you, Colleen. All right, if there's no more discussion, we can vote. All in favor of approval of the CUP with those 3 conditions and 4 finding and facts, say aye.
I,
Anybody opposed? Okay, that is approved. Our next public hearing on the agenda is posted for 6:40 this evening or shortly thereafter. We're at 6:52. And this second public hearing is an ordinance for the creation of an interim use permit IUP within the city code. At 6:52, we will officially now open the public hearing. Again, I see nobody in the audience to speak for this, but I still have to say it 3 times.
Is there a time limit you have to wait? Or can you go like?
We have to wait, can't start the public hearing until the posted time.
Right, but between your calls, I mean, can you
I have
call like,
never heard of the time limit, but
I was just wondering if a minute would be like. I don't know.
I know we have to look at Robert's rules to find
yeah,
out.
I have not run across that when I was in township, but I'm not sure. So let's, for the first time, call if there's anybody who would like to make a comment for or against the ordinance for the creation of an interim use permit IUP within the city code. Seeing no one. I will ask again, is there anybody that would like to make a comment for or against the ordinance for the creation of an interim use permit IUP within the city code? Again, no one. And the third time, is there anyone that would like to speak for or against the ordinance for the creation of an interim use permit IUP within the city code? Hearing no one, and there's nobody in the waiting room? Nobody in the waiting room? So we will, at 6:53, close the public hearing. And Erin, can we ask you again for the staff report here? We appreciate it.
Sure. Happy to do it. So my understanding of this one is that you have a particular situation in the city where you would like to consider issuing an interim use permit, but that interim use permits were not addressed in your code. So to make that an option for you, Phil has drafted some ordinance language for your consideration tonight. What he's done is add interim use permits into the same section where you deal with conditional use permits in your code. Really, the main difference between a conditional use permit and an interim use permit is that an interim use is tied to either a particular event or a particular date. So, for example, you could put a particular time limit on an interim use permit or to a particular ending event, such as a business going out of business or something like that. The language that he has inserted includes a definition of an interim use permit and some conditions for when you may grant an interim use permit. I'll mention that this language, in particular these criteria, came from state statute, so these are quite common for interim use permits. Yeah, it shows you that, you know, the use has to conform with underlying zoning, that there has to be a date or event that where the use will terminate, couple of other criteria, and that those interim uses have to be specifically listed in a given zoning district, or the city council can determine in its discretion that the use is appropriate and compatible with the purpose of the district. So there's a little bit of flexibility built in there. Yeah, and the rest of the additions are fairly minor. So I would attempt to answer any questions that you have about interim use permits.
Any questions from anyone here? I do have one quick question, and it's just the language, and make sure, because we are a zoning body, but we make recommendations to the city council. So the way this reads, we would still be doing any public hearings for an interim use permit would still happen in the planning and zoning meetings. And just like everything else, we make our final vote and recommendation, and it does go to city council for approval. Same process.
Yes, same process as the conditional use permit. Yep.
I just wanted to make sure that was clarified for everybody.
Mhm.
Is there a time limit on these? I know it's generally figured to use an interim use permit until something fits in place for an entire conditional use permit.
It's,
But would would we start with a 90-day permit or a 2-year permit?
And that would, the time frame would be something we'd make on a case-by-case basis at the time they're applying for it.
Is it specified in this
It is not.
document? So that's something
not
that,
in here.
that's something that would probably should be specified that the
Well,
city.
it is specified that you make a recommendation to the city council, who then approves the time limit. So it does specify that.
Okay.
Yeah.
I was,
So letter B on that draft, so 151.368, where letter B is, it says, where it's talking about the definition, interim use is the use of a property, is a temporary use of property until a particular date, comma, until the occurrence of a particular event, comma, or until zoning regulations no longer permit it. So
So it's-
that gives us the flexibility, because depending on what the interim use is, you may want 90 days, we may want 5 years, we may want until, it gives us the flexibility to not be locked into something with a hard number as well, like we have been with some other bits of the code we've had to update.
Okay.
And the conditional use permit, correct me if I'm wrong, Aaron, but that typically stays with the property owner as long as they're there. Conversely,
Yes,
the interim use permit,
Goes away.
well, can be a shorter period of time for review. Subject to any of those things that the vice chair just noted is, so it need not go the entire ownership of that property. It
Right.
is shorter
Yeah,
I-
and-
time or event or something.
I thought, listening to Phil last week or last month, that conditional use permits stay with the land.
yes, they do.
So it's not just that it stays with the owner, they continue, so if I buy a piece of property with a conditional use permit, I can
Right. but
make
you-
use of
Continue
that
using that
permit.
business use of whatever was previously approved.
Right.
Yes, that's correct.
Okay. Now,
that's what I was just
now
gonna
including
ask.
to that,
If
the
I,
interim use permit can be erased at the change of the property owner.
Right, so we could say.
or also if zoning changes, if we have a code change and that, whatever that use was, if we no longer allow it in our code, that would also go away, so it would not be grandfathered in.
Mhm.
And I'm just thinking of, remember Camping World? They bought the next door property, which had functioned with the back area unpaved. But then we moved to wanting pavement throughout. Well, for whatever reason, when they bought that property, they were thinking that they could continue that use as it was for the previous owner as forever. This interim use permit would potentially allow them to continue doing that, but I'm just gonna,
And it could come back to us, and at that point, when we have it, we could say until the property is sold, or for X number of years, or for whatever we decide as a body to recommend to city council.
Well, the interim use permit doesn't allow them to continue, it allows the city to not pull strings on them, or to be able to pull strings on them. Because they can use that property as they please right now, because this wasn't in place when he bought that property.
well, and that's, yeah, and they may come back and apply for this.
They may
Whatever,
not, they may not see the need to apply for it,
Because it
since
wasn't.
it wasn't in place to start
What
with.
they bought, they
And
can
they don't
continue to
need
use
to.
as it is, it's because they wanted to do some additional paving, and that change kicked in the whole piece of it with the code.
Right. So one of the things, this is one of those issues that, remember back with the first potential buyer of the animal house. They had been issued that, special,
Conditional.
yeah, some sort of permit that's not even in the code.
Well, it may have been in the code at the time, because there used to be another, something similar to conditional use permit at the time. They blended them together to make it one.
Oh,
There
okay,
used to be two different
thank you.
things.
But that one carried a special time frame, because remember, it was supposed to be expiring and nobody ever caught it, so whatever, so then we went through that whole thing. But the interim use permit was something that was cited at that time, and that's what my point is actually, as we find things, it's not enough for me to discover them, make note of them, and just not do anything about it. So I do like that we're moving forward with getting this in place.
I think it's a good addition to the code.
I do.
It'll just make it a little bit more flexible and also let us put some boundaries along certain permits that go out that are not permanent and indefinitely can be run that way, so.
And just one clarification too, that I would make note of is that as an advisory board and, to the city council, public hearings can be held at either, before either body. If we were to get into a pinch for time or something. Ideally, they will come here first and they'll make a presentation.
Do we have any more?
You repeat that, son. What you just said, I lost part of it.
So,
As an advisory board.
as an advisory commission,
Mhm.
you make recommendations. And council makes final decisions.
Right.
The ideal way or the, natural flow would be that this body would hold the public hearings
Mhm.
as basis for making their recommendations. But if we were to get into a real pinch on publication or whatever, the city council can hold public hearings on matters as well.
Okay,
But when we are setting public hearings, as our body is setting them, certainly 30 days is, for us, it should be fine. It would be if something else came up that wasn't able to be noticed prior to our meeting. I could see that. Good to know.
thank you.
A lot of-
My preference would be that anything that's planning and zoning related does come through the planning and zoning commission, but I could certainly see for other ordinances though, where that could be helpful.
Right,
Okay,
I think a lot of it, the planning and zoning, there was so much going on in the city council because there was no planning and zoning. There's one or two people who were involved in it. And all of the public hearings and the meetings were going till midnight.
all right. Well, back to this ordinance for the creation of an interim use permit. Is there any more specific questions for Stan Tech or any other discussion on this piece? Otherwise, I would entertain a motion to approve or deny this ordinance for the creation of an interim use permit within the code.
I make a motion that we introduce this ordinance.
Introduce or approve.
Or
I would
approve.
say recommend, we're supposed to
Recommend
recommend.
approval.
Yeah, I recommend we approve the interim use permit into our existing code.
So motion to recommend approval of the draft ordinance on interim use permits. Would we mention the, section 151 amended into section 151.368 as proposed? I mean, how would we?
So the title of the public hearing is Public Hearing to Consider an Ordinance for the Creation of an Interim Use Permit, IUP, within the city code.
Right.
And in our packet, the information is very specific, so with the text specified as laid out,
All I just have to do is,
copy.
well, yeah, I can copy that. Okay.
But correct me if I'm wrong, what I'm understanding your question to be
Is how do we
is
write them?
there's a difference between creation of a whole new section versus integrating it into this.
Well, and what it
This is
does say,
amending.
it does say within the city code. So that.
But not as a standalone section. It's.
No, it does say within the city code, and along with that is this.
So the motion should be to approve the draft ordinance and interim use permits. With the,
As prepared by,
as prepared for by Stan Beck
From our packet, with no changes.
within our packet, yeah. I'll make a second on that. Thank you, Jim.
Yeah.
All right,
Thank you.
you got all that, Clean?
I have motion to recommend approval of the draft ordinance on interim use permits as prepared by Phil.
As prepared in our packet is probably fine.
Mhm.
There are no changes to that. So we've got the motion, we've got the second, we've got it down. Unless there's other discussion, I'm ready to have us vote on that. All in favor of approval and recommendation, send it off to the council. For the ordinance for the creation of an interim use permit IUP within the city code, say aye. Aye. Anyone opposed? Okay. Third public hearing. Anybody need some water after that one?
I need my computer to shut down. It keeps trying to update
Oh,
and it's saying gonna
Tell it
update.
Tell it to quit.
Well, and I can't, cancel's not an option.
So our next public hearing on the agenda, we've got a lot tonight, three, the third one here. Got four, actually, so our third public hearing posted for 6:45 or shortly thereafter. We are now at 7:09.
Or shortly thereafter.
Yep, very shortly thereafter, but we are amending city code to align the required time limit for water and sewer hookups to the city's public utility system in section 51.020 and 51.021. And I will open the public hearing at 7:09 PM. Again, we need to look and see if we have anybody out here that wants to make public comment. And double check if there is anybody in our Zoom waiting room. I haven't heard any beep, so. With that, we do need to still call 3 times. Is there anybody who would like to speak for or against the public hearing where we are amending city code to align the required time limit for water and sewer hookups to the city's public utility system in section 51.020 and 51.021? Hearing no one, we will ask a second time. Is there anyone who would like to speak for or against amending city code to align the required time limit for water and sewer hookups to the city's public utility systems in sections 51.020 and 51.021? Still hearing no one, nobody's in the Zoom room. And so I will call the third time. Is there anyone who would like to speak for or against the public hearing where we are amending city code to align the required time limit for water and sewer hookups to the city's public utility system in sections 51.020 and 51.021? I am hearing no one, so I will close the public hearing. It is now 7:10. And are you ready for a staff report on this one, Erin?
Yes, I can be brief on this one. This code update is being proposed to reconcile a discrepancy. You have 2 sections of the public utility code dealing with the sewer service connections, 51.021A and 51.021B. Each of those, one deals with existing residences and one deals with new residences or buildings. And both of these say that any building within 500 feet must connect within 1 year after sewer is available. And actually the second one, which deals with new residences, says that such a building within 500 feet of a sewer main must connect before a C of O is issued. Those are consistent with each other, and so no changes are recommended there. However, in the water service connection section, there is a discrepancy in 51.020A. This requires that new residences or buildings that need water service and are within 50 feet or 500 feet of a main have to connect when construction is complete. So that's for new construction. The second paragraph of the next subsection, 51.020B, requires that existing residences or buildings need to connect by July 31st, 2014. Of course, that date is obsolete. And so we recommend changing that section to match the sewer service deadline, which is within 1 year after service is available. And so the attached ordinance language that you see includes that edit. That's on page 3 of the packet material here, where you see the actual ordinance language. we are changing the language to mirror the sewer service section that says within 500 feet of a municipal water main, the buildings have to connect to the water system within 1 year of availability of that service. And I'd be happy to take questions.
Do we have any properties outside of 500 feet? Or the houses are,
I believe there
I
are
don't
some.
know.
yeah, we're talking about more for sewer and
Mhm.
from the main. This is from the main back to the building. Is there anything more than 500 feet?
Homes or businesses or anything.
Anything?
I don't know, would,
Some stuff may be over in second. part of
right, would,
Woodsville or something.
McDermott's property be more than 500 feet?
I wouldn't think so. Because
Huh? You
I
wouldn't?
wouldn't think so, isn't there?
So it
alley
wouldn't
runs right
stop
between
them from hooking up, it would just not require it if they're that far away.
I know there's homes on West Center Street that are 500 feet. for
It
sure.
just would require the 1 year timeline. Correct? Is that what the deal is?
I thought,
New construction. If I'm reading this right, and correct me, Aaron,
Mhm.
any new construction to be built shall be located or shall be connected if it's within 500 feet of any municipal sewer main. So if it's outside of that 500 feet, our code would not require that connection, is that correct?
That's correct.
So then
It
somewhere.
doesn't prohibit the connection, like you said. They could still connect if they wanted, but it's not required.
Okay, so somewhere we need to amend the code. That they're not allowed to build outside of 500 feet.
Well,
Or.
we're not saying that they can't build outside of 500 feet. If they build farther away than 500 feet from the main, they don't have to connect to municipal water or sewer. They could
Correct.
use well and septic if they want. They could connect if they want to. So there's nothing that says you have to build within 500 feet of water and sewer.
I'm just saying, what I'm referring to is future permits should be made so they can't build outside of that distance.
And I think right now what we're talking about though, and that could be a discussion for a future meeting. I think right now we're just talking about, we've got a date that's 2014 where people are having to get done with that by.
I understand that, but we're throwing all of this in one basket, so you kind of gotta throw the apples in the corners and figure out what you're actually doing here. I know we're trying to bring things to the same date. I
Right.
get that.
Which is what my understanding when council asked, wait, how did this work? The Water and Sewer Committee recognized the discrepancy in dates. One was allowing 2 years to hook up, one was allowing 1. And so that was one thing, that we need to get those two things aligned. But I think council was really hoping that this group would look at the entire utility code beyond just 1, aligning those 2 dates, 2, for the very reason you're speaking about, Commissioner, is that there are still some things.
There's
that-
other things that are not
There's a-
alongside it, yeah.
There's a lot of things we know with
Yeah.
the input of sewer and water, which is the big point of why we're trying to get that RFP, so we can get somebody that can just help us comb through the code and get those figured out.
and just to be clear, we're talking new construction, not existing,
Exactly.
right?
That's what I'm talking about, new construction
Because I'm
on that
thinking,
500 feet, new construction should be within the 500 feet.
okay, but I guess, so it's new construction, because my question would be, okay, we've got a water and sewer project, and there are some existing homes that are, I think on West Center Street, that are more than 500 feet away from the main. I think mine may be close to 500 feet away from the main. I don't think it's, I think it's
Depending on
less.
the terrain, that 500 feet could be flat, open, easy to lay pipe, or it could be rocky,
Right.
steep.
Absolutely.
Right,
So I mean, I think that's probably something we should add up to our list of things that we do want to look about when we,
To me, it's not the 500 feet that's the issue. It's the issue if you're gonna issue new permits, you should require it to be on the lot. Subject to being within the
We
five
want to
hundred
share
feet.
the cost of water and sewer with as many people as
Exactly.
possible. If they're in the city, they should be
They should be part of it.
contributing to the cost of our public utilities.
Exactly.
Yeah,
But if it's already existing property, well, that's.
well, what we're saying is if it's an existing sewer main must connect, if they're within 500 feet, they must connect within 1 year after it's available. That's what we're saying for existing.
For existing.
And when we're talking about the current project, water and sewer
Yeah.
thing, remember, those, especially the sewer part of it, is being phased in by zones. We talked about the different zones of. So that 1 year is actually tied to the date of their letter. And that's how we'll be tracking that 1 year. Because the letter will serve as date of availability. Because we've already got pipe all over the place, right?
So
That makes sense.
So it'd be done, so the letters would be handed out on a zone by zone basis.
Yeah, so let's say that zone doesn't start for 6 months, they'll get their letter in 6 months, and that's when the clock starts to tick.
Pick for the year.
Right.
Got that. Okay. So actually, tonight, what we're talking about here is just the timeline for
For
sentence, for doing the hookups.
Which affects both existing and future.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So we definitely, I do believe we need that when we get our RFP and our new vendor set up there. That should be on the list of things to tackle. For the existing public hearing we are having on this, is there any more discussion on the public hearing that we've got right now to consider amendments to the city's code section 51.020 and 51.021 to align the timing allowed for water and sewer hookups to the city's public utility systems? So any more discussion on the timing? Or if no more discussion, we can call for the vote.
Did you have a motion?
You need a
Did we close the
motion.
public
We do
hearing?
need- we did close the public hearing at, yes.
Do I make a motion that we amend the city's code section 51.020 and 51.021 to align with the timing allowed for water and sewer hookups to the city's public utility system?
Thank you. So we,
As per
And
the packet.
And as per the items outlined in the packet.
okay, yep.
So
Is there a second?
Second that.
So we've got a motion on the floor that's been moved forward and seconded. All in favor? Aye.
I,
Any opposed? And we will send that one off to city council. And we have our last public hearing for the evening. Posted for 6:50 PM or shortly thereafter, and I have 7:21. It is the temporary interim moratorium prohibiting the sale, manufacturing, or distribution of cannabis while further study is conducted. Moratorium to expire January 1st, 2025, and I will open the public hearing at 7:22 PM. And again, we do need to look in our audience and see if we have anyone who would like to speak for or against this.
Popular today.
Tommy
This is the
Sullivan.
most boring
I
meeting, and we've got
know.
4 hearings.
Well, there's the Vikings game going on again tonight as well, so,
right?
yeah. So would I do need
Make
to
a
ask
motion to
3 times, is there anyone who would like to speak for or against the temporary interim moratorium prohibiting the sale, manufacturing, or distribution of cannabis while further study is conducted. Moratorium to expire January 1st, 2025. I hear no one. Second time here. Is there anyone who would like to speak for or against the temporary interim moratorium prohibiting the sale, manufacturing, or distribution of cannabis while further study is conducted? Moratorium to expire January 1st, 2025. I also hear no one again. Is there anybody in the Zoom room? Just double checking. Okay.
I've been watching.
And
It was
our
so much.
third call for comment. Is there anybody who would like to speak for or against the temporary interim moratorium prohibiting the sale, manufacturing, or distribution of cannabis while further study is conducted? Moratorium to expire January 1st, 2025. I hear no one, so it is 7:23 and we will close.
They had to take 2 minutes.
I got 7:22 to 23 on that one. Probably
All of
close.
these have been 1 minute.
Yeah, so the first one, I think we had 2. All right, have you got a staff report on this? I know it's a popular topic amongst a lot of
No,
small.
I don't have a staff report on this one.
Okay,
This one is one of those.
Stolen it on staff, but.
This is one of those items that, that as you mentioned before, some things will come to planning and zoning. Some things, the more business related, this would be kind of in that category. Planning and zoning would participate in terms of defining, prohibitions in terms of location or that sort of thing.
and that's what we're looking for here.
But,
Do things in the best public interest.
But so if you look at like League of Minnesota Cities and some other things, there are a couple different things that cities should be doing with the new cannabis laws on the books. One of the ones that we can take care of here at zoning is, as you were alluding to, how far a setback is, so 1,000 feet from a school, 500 feet from a daycare. And that is actually what we are looking at for this particular ordinance on this one.
the study part of it.
Yes.
That's what you're studying.
Yes, so we're gonna do a moratorium while we look at, here's the state law, figure out how we need to write this into our code.
For the distances and stuff, everybody's look at the smut ordinance, can't they?
Well, that's what we wanna figure out, and we will have until, if we pass this tonight and the council approves it, until January 1st, 2025, at which point the moratorium would be gone, and hopefully we've got our code changes in place by then, so we could repeal this. and-
Basically, we're just recommending a moratorium until 2025, so.
Yep.
Oh, this is happening.
No, until 2024 is that
The end of 2024.
January
one of 2025.
Yep.
Right, and I do have a question after we get this one done.
All right, so
relating to.
is any,
A couple of things, if I could add, having talked about this with the attorney. One is that state statute, as they've written it, requires that the governing body actually has to hold the public hearing. So this, in his interpretation, means that this is one that the council would have to hold as separate.
So they have to hold a second public hearing,
They will have to hold the real hearing.
so we're doing what here?
so we can recommend that they use this and hold a second public hearing and approve it, I suppose.
The other thing is that this does not cover, because he's just concerned that if someone challenged the actual hearing. But there's also, this didn't cover. This is only addressing the business piece of it. No
Correct.
sale, whatever, blah.
What it's not addressing is, and when I read some of the information out there, like the League of Minnesota Cities and some of the other information that's on different websites, is this will address just the zoning aspect. What we're not addressing is the fact that we could have people smoking outside and there's
In public parks.
City council.
public parks. We could have people smoking in the parking lot with cannabis.
That's what I was actually gonna bring up after this was over.
Yeah.
And do we have to? we
And
should
so
look
there's
into
a,
that.
there's a separate, I did get a separate template from Mike that theoretically, when council holds theirs, they could also consider.
Well, the city has a ban on alcohol on all city properties.
Mhm.
So why wouldn't you would follow through the same with this as you would smoking like city?
Well, I
the
looked
clinics
and I
stuff.
don't know that I saw, is there a city smoking ordinance currently? I think we just follow state
I
law,
don't
so
think there
that's
is.
why people can smoke on our outdoor areas that are owned by the city, so what a lot of towns, when I was looking through some of this, have done is they have a city smoking ordinance where they ban not only on the inside of buildings, but also on any city property, similar to like you go to Mayo Clinic and you have to step off their property to
Right.
smoke.
Right.
And what the other things I've seen is it's not just smoking, but also you talk about vaping and just other forms of use.
Another form of
Is that-
nicotine use.
Yeah, cause that came up in a conversation to me, but I also in Rochester, at one of the restaurants, walking to the door and so many of them out smoking, it was like, oh, that's what it was.
Hit you like a brick.
Yeah, like a skunk.
So yeah, so right now, any tobacco use, you could just replace that with legally obtained marijuana.
Mhm.
And right now, several of the reservations are selling it within Minnesota legally.
Right, but you're talking, there's a difference, there is a difference between tobacco and alcohol because it's
Either way,
altering substance. Like
Right.
alcohol.
but
Mhm.
what we're
There are
talking here is
different
also
things.
impairment, but at the same time, what we're talking is secondhand smoke and some of the same issues that just come from general smoking too, so. Since the city will have to hold a public hearing, the city council, maybe our recommendation is that they. Also hold a public hearing, not only on to cover this, but they consider also looking at a smoking ordinance as well, or no smoking ordinance, I guess would be.
Is that within our purview, though? I mean,
We can
I don't-
recommend, but,
Okay.
and it's an offshoot of zoning up with this whole law, but they just need to take a bigger look at it and
Yeah.
get it done right.
I agree.
I just throw it out there because it's.
So, but in the
It's
meantime,
all
we
controlled
could,
substances, no
we
matter how
could
it is.
probably send them a recommendation that they have a public hearing and add this to city code.
Right, and I think if we make the recommendation, then it puts it front and center for city council,
Mm-hmm.
you know,
It's very
so we
clear.
don't forget it. Because I think it is something that we should look at because there's that potential that's gonna happen, you
Well,
know?
So should we make a motion that they hold a public hearing on XYZ at the earliest possible, on the earliest possible date, which means probably October,
week.
because you probably can't get it in.
next week, we won't be able to get it in for public legal notice, but
Oh, yeah.
they should be
But
able to in
something
October.
like that, council.
How about if I make a motion that we recommend to council that they use our information that we do have for our temporary interim moratorium to hold their own public hearing in October on the prohibiting the sale, manufacturing, or distributing of cannabis while further study is conducted. Moratorium to expire January 1st, 2025. And they also hold a public hearing for a no smoking ordinance. Because I think between now and then, that's October, we can gather language. And if the council wants help drafting, I did do some looking and all the research on this particular topic. And so I've got several sample ones from local area towns and we can certainly find one that works for us.
You need to repeat all that verbiage.
Well, and if I may.
Yeah, she
also-
can use it repeat. I can tell by the look at her. lip.
If I might also add is, again, because this is not going to cover any public use. That's also something that So it would be the interim ordinance to allow for study,
Yep,
an ordinance amendment to prohibit public use. And then also you're adding the prohibit smoking in
on city
public
property.
spaces.
Yep, city property and public spaces. Because I think we want to cover the inside and the outside of our public spaces.
We do with alcohol, that's how we keep the marijuana off the lot. You know,
Yeah,
that says they can't throw some seeds out there and grow it,
you can grow stuff.
Growing is legal.
but it has, but it has to be in a
Or
locked
flowers.
space.
Or flowers.
Oh, it does.
Does it?
Yes, it does. It has to be in a locked space. It's inaccessible to the public.
So my draft motion I have was to send to council.
Now you gotta go.
Because we haven't got it seconded yet. My draft motion was to send to council a recommendation that they hold a public hearing using the information from our fourth one today on the temporary interim, on those words in there, as well as prohibiting public use and prohibiting smoking in indoor and outdoor public areas. And am I missing indoor and outdoor?
Temporary interim?
Um, yes, the temporary interim moratorium prohibiting the sale.
Isn't interim, I don't know.
I would say copy what's in number 4, that would be what's in my motion.
Got it?
And then I'm gonna add
Okay,
prohibit public use and also adding prohibit smoking in indoor and outdoor public areas.
Yeah, so,
I don't,
so you scratch the word temporary, right? Because this is called an interim moratorium to start with.
Temporary interim moratorium prohibiting the sale, manufacturing or
You get
distribution.
the term interim if you have temporary.
that was her
Ten-
point.
Yeah.
One has to do with time, one has to do with content.
And did you say public, or did you say use of it?
Prohibit public use.
Use in public
Okay.
spaces.
Okay. I
So
took that- I
public
took
use
that
and
differently.
prohibit smoking in indoor and outdoor public areas.
Yep.
And my definition of smoking would include anything cannabis or tobacco or vaping or whatever that
Okay.
part doesn't have to be in.
right, then do we need the,
Yeah, and I, smoking it.
do we need to prohibit public use then, if you're prohibiting smoking? I mean,
in
I
public
guess
spaces.
you want, I guess you
Well,
can
there's public
prohibit
use.
gummy
There's public use, but
Gummies or not?
and brownies. Oh my
it's a
God.
different part of the law too. So public use,
Yeah, it's something for breakfast.
Right,
and you've read a lot on this too. So public use, you could be publicly using cannabis on your own front lawn.
And that's okay,
That's
That's not public
different
use. That's
than-
private property.
We're
right?
talking
Well, it's,
on city-owned land.
Well, and even, smoking inside, as a smoker, I'm just gonna say.
State law covers that.
State
already.
law covers that, so I don't
But I-
know that you
state
need
law
to.
covers inside, but doesn't cover.
Doesn't cover anything
Cover
on the
front.
outside. I think to be clean, we just include inside and outside. It's very clear. The other piece that I have seen, and this would be for council to decide if they also want to do that, but I've seen some towns, mostly bigger ones, but also put violations. So if somebody is smoking, that there is teeth in it, a violation of smoking publicly. You hit the year 2025 and now you wanna do it, well, you write a citation and there's no teeth with it. You might get a collection of them after a while. Do you put a fine with it? That's something the council can also consider, that I have seen some towns considering, so.
Well, that's only has a.
But I'm not putting that in this. We got enough words in this for Colleen that she had to type.
You heard, you see her eyes opening up.
I know.
More words.
yeah, okay,
It was a,
I got motion to use. the planning and zoning information to hold a public hearing on the temporary from up there.
Yep.
Careful, somebody's gonna need a stiff.
And to prohibit public use of marijuana. And to prohibit smoking in indoor and outdoor public areas during their October meeting.
Yes, so we'd like to ask council to take all that and
That's the
roll it into
motion?
an October meeting.
That's the motion?
That is the motion on the floor. Is there a second?
Who made that? You made that motion?
I made that one. Sorry, guys. That's long. It's a mouthful.
Okay,
So it's a mouthful. We recommend it go to council.
he's called a Paul second.
I'll second it.
Yeah, a second.
So is there any more discussion on what we want to gift to city council? All right, all in favor of approving this? Aye. Any opposed? City council as a new gift. It's approved.
Yes.
Gifts.
Yeah, okay.
Okay, that was a lot of public hearing. My mouth is dry. I do need to drink water.
You already get one?
Hmm?
You already get one, right?
I brought one with me. Yeah, all right, we are to the next section of our agenda, financial reports. So we first got on there a budget comparison year to date as of October 31st, 2023 with,
That's about.
or August 31st, 2023 with
Oh,
PFY comparison. Okay, so in our packets, we're looking at page 13.
So current year,
Year to date actual, not actual current year, prior year.
probably the salary, so amended budget and salary. Salaries and wages, is this just for P and Z?
So our-
Sorry, that's expended.
When we look at our expenditures, when we're looking at the salary and wages, help me out here, Sunny. Previously you said your part of your FTE, your salary is out of planning and zoning, is it like 0.3 or whatever?
20%, I think,
What is it?
20%,
20?
then part of Renee's. Part of, that's also inclusive of the project specialist.
Have we hired a project
Position that-
specialist?
no.
Okay,
So what percentage of Renee's goes 20% also?
I
You
don't
said yours
remember,
was 20%.
I don't remember that offhand, sorry. I can go grab it if you want me to.
that would be great.
Yeah. So. When we look at that. So now would that include?
Plus some-
Include engineering, would include
That'd be the
Sandtech
project
putting
specialist,
packets
wouldn't
together.
it? That'd be the project specialist,
Yeah.
wouldn't it?
I
Well,
don't
no,
think
the
that would
project
include
specialist.
the salaries of
No.
the Stantec, would it?
No, that
that's-
would be,
That's where I was going, but that
salaries
would
and
be
wages
engineering.
is city,
Right, yeah.
Yeah, salaries and wages would be internal.
yes.
How do we get?
What do we call the project specialist, and she's got it split off that way too.
Cause project specialist is the person who's gonna be hired to pull all things together for a property. Cause the idea with the project specialist, I think. You can correct me if I'm wrong, I thought the project specialist was going to bring. Everything that's out there, say for my property, that would all be in a file. So everything about my property is in one place. and not scattered.
So this is gonna be one person just putting this stuff together. So-
Yeah.
So this is gonna be a new position?
It's an improved position. I think we
So I
approved
would
it in
assume
January.
that that would be almost exclusively planning and zoning, because it's to help, no?
See,
I think we'll have to get more in when we get closer
Yeah.
to hiring and meet with them.
Yeah.
And figure out. And we'll ask Sunny when she comes back, what amount total of FTE
mhm.
is zoning dedicated?
So basically,
Yeah.
break a file cabinet down by address.
Yeah, basically, yeah. So Sonny, we were talking about the project specialist, and correct me if I'm wrong. The project specialist, when that person is hired, they'll be tasked with exactly what you said, so breaking a file cabinet down and saying everything for a specific property is gonna be in that file,
Yep. So it broke down by address.
no matter what it is,
Address.
Okay,
by address.
so 0.2 is what you said yours was. What do we have total in there though? Is it between the other folks? We've got a 0.3 maybe?
It's a combination of, the guys. Sometimes doing.
But if somebody does a one-off task, you're not adjusting the budget for those 3 hours or whatever it took them, or are you?
So, I'm sorry.
If somebody, let's say, somebody from maintenance or
Kane.
Kane's area has to change a sign or something, are you taking those 3 hours and earmarking them to planning and zoning, or do they stay within their normal budget?
No, it's all going by department.
Okay, so when
So-
we look at this, departments are hitting our budget, various departments. And so what amount of FTE do we have covered in our salaries and wages? Because we're at 71,000 was the amended budget.
Well, there is no amended budget, it's just rated that way. I'm sorry, I wanted to run back and get that.
I'm just trying to understand the numbers, so. And is that 71,000, maybe that was if we had hired the project specialist? Is that why we're seeing a smaller number so far?
Okay, planning and
Especially been put on staff yet, correct? Is that
Right.
Why that number's there?
That, because that was the one that was discussed last year and approved to be hired in January.
Mhm.
So,
So the money's sitting there just waiting for.
so here we are in
waiting for-
September without a project specialist,
Wait
but
for
that would
employee.
account for why that budget number is bigger yet and not spent.
Well, part of it, yeah. Part of it too is that, it's not for not wanting to hire that person, but that person needs to have workspace too. And it needs to be fairly secure workspace that can be locked up. I mean, as you lay these files out and start getting it, it's, space is an issue in this building and trying to get that all. But to tell you, okay, so that includes some of, a portion of all of the, public works people. And, again, the project specialist is in there. And that was, I'm thinking it was 75% of that person's time.
Of the project specialist.
Yes,
So help me understand Public Works. And just because maybe I'm not thinking of the possibilities, what would Public Works do for P and Z?
a portion of their, well, they're doing,
Do they do follow-up and looking in on permits that have been issued? Okay.
no, but
Because
they,
that would be P and Z I could see, but
Yeah,
Not really.
because I don't know what they would.
It'd be more like Stantec with permits.
That's not-
that's parks.
You know,
no,
I
as far as the
didn't,
sign goes, that'd be a streets and roads thing.
Yeah,
But they would bill their time to Streets and Roads Department for that. So they're doing stuff for the fire hall, they bill the fire hall for that stuff.
I did envision that they would be participating more in following up on code violations and
so have
enforcement and stuff like
Have we
that.
asked them to
So-
do that this year?
Police.
So we haven't asked them to do that, you haven't asked them to do that, but we're still, our budget's reflecting that they're doing that?
Yeah, but the actuals aren't
What
there,
kind of
so.
code-
it's-
That's what I'm
it's just a
asking.
bug.
I'm
Okay.
just trying to understand.
What kind of code enforcement are we asking them to do? Mow lawns?
Nothing yet.
Yeah,
No, but I mean,
Well, that would be that would be an example.
Yep, if
If
you have
somebody's-
somebody that's a code violation or following up on complaints on CUPs or,
Get your badge too?
I don't
You
know,
know,
I'm
they're gonna
just
be the
trying to.
cops, they're gonna be the.
So
be the
Public
code
Works has
cops.
got a portion in here, but they really, we haven't asked them to do anything on that side of it yet this year.
Okay.
Project Specialist has part of this number that's in here, but that was approved in January and it's September and hasn't been hired yet for this year.
I just wanna understand the 93. And we're at 25 for the month. I just don't understand. Cause that's salaries of our employees, right?
Correct.
Well, but part of yours is that.
Part of that is
act-
mine.
This
Part-
month.
Yeah, and part of Renee's because remember, this is not just planning and zoning. When this is. We're processing all the permits and all of that stuff. That time, staff time is going against your budget.
So that brings up, the last month we did ask specifically for a list of all the permits and applications that were issued to be included in our packet, and I did not see that in our packet. Okay, can we make sure for next month that we do get a full listing of permits and applications both for this month and for the upcoming month? So the one that should have been in our packet and next month's.
So you're looking for August and September activity.
If we can go back further, I think that would be great too, but yes, I'd be happy with the 2 months the one that had been promised to us and then this next month.
I'm just gonna say, I don't know that I promised that, but I understand the request.
So I will roll that down as a to-do for next month, that we will see two reports for that month.
So, I mean, one of the struggles that we have, here is that we don't have a way of enforcing things. I mean, we have nobody but Sunny to go out and if there's a complaint or,
And that's absolutely something I brought up before, that we need teeth in this. And that's absolutely where I would see some of that area. Public Works could go out and do that, but I think part of the RFP on my list was also looking at that part of the code.
right? I mean, I know we did have a complaint about a property and I think Sunny, you had to go, right? Up to was Third
Yeah.
Street Southwest, yeah,
Mhm.
with some
And I think
county
that's-
people.
And I don't know if we would consider that P and Z. Would we, that's more,
Zoning, wasn't it a zoning issue?
Well, it's a zoning issue, and again,
There's,
when you talk about the planning and zoning from a budget perspective, and that doesn't mean everything
no,
is, this group is gonna see that. But there are
That's-
costs attributable.
right, and that's
to
kind of why we're
that.
looking for that list of permits and applications, both from just trying to understand our numbers, but also just making sure we're aware of what's happening, so as we go through and have these different sections of code, we can prioritize which ones are probably the most important to hit.
and it helps.
Gonna help
with
our-
these numbers, I think, because you could probably say, okay, there's a median amount of time for every permit of this person and this person, so you looking at that, so let's say we had 10 permits in a month, there's gonna be. Let's just say if we said at a median or a mean, there's 10 hours.
Yeah.
For each one, and
The
we've
X
got
number.
10, that's 100 hours.
There's
We
X
know
number of hours per permit,
Yeah.
basically, somehow.
Yeah.
Well,
So then
that's-
it makes sense.
Yeah.
I think that's gonna vary though, based on what.
It
type of
is,
permit.
it is. I'm just throwing that out
Yeah.
there, just so you see it
But
and you
I-
can say, okay, we know that. it's
I
gonna
think for
take-
us, the more information we understand about what's going and processing through.
Yeah.
The better we're gonna be working with our vendor once we get them hired from the RFP to
Right.
figure out what we need to do with code here.
Yeah, and it's transparency.
How much,
Absolutely.
how much of the actual RFP is planning and zoning actually gonna be working with? It's my-
Hopefully quite a bit. Well, we'll get to that on our.
I question that with more administrator in the office working and some of that stuff for,
Well, we'll get to that next.
with hands-on.
So right
Well-
now we are,
If I can just comment on, trying to look at, like a mean or a median or whatever, I mean, that is gonna be really hard.
No, and I would just use that.
No,
Yeah.
but I'm saying, I can tell you, we've issued 103 permits thus far.
Here.
Through today. I think I did the 103rd one. But some of those are simple
Right,
re-roofs.
some are a business.
Right, and what we
That's
call,
okay.
over the counter, because we don't call them flat fees, because but they're things that internally we can issue. There are
Right.
ones that the value-based things, those are gonna be far more, complex. And remember, in shifting from, Southeast building inspections, they used to do our zoning review as part of their building review. They only had 3 jurisdictions, and they knew our code and could function in that capacity. We don't have that. Or CMS hasn't typically done that. But what Renee and I have done now is separate the residential from the commercial. Commercial stuff, I'm gonna see, she's gonna continue with the residential stuff, and I'm gonna try and head off some of those things that we don't need them to get sent to CMS and go through the zoning review and discover that they need a variance, right? I mean, we should be able to make that determination in-house before it ever goes there. I'm
I
sorry,
understand CMS, what's that?
CMS is Construction Management Services.
Is that a
There
building
are-
inspector?
Yes, they
vendor,
have our building official. So some of that stuff, we're gonna try and head off because and we became, they're one of their 43 jurisdictions, so. We got really spoiled with Roger and Casey being able to, turn things around rather quickly. But in talking about the permits, so there are some that are going to be really complex, some that are not so much, and we're still working on meshing those expectations with CMS too.
so here's a question, you did mention 103 permits we've hit for this year. And I know we've had this discussion before, but if we know the number of permits, we should be able to backtrack and say, here's how much we've taken in this year for permits. Have we got that number in our report anywhere? I know we've requested that one before as well.
Well, that one.
Our software hasn't broken that stuff down yet.
Well, what happens is I haven't figured out how to get the report to spit out what I want it to. What it'll do is to show the fee portion of it that we're actually collecting will also reflect, okay, so
So clear answer, is there a way for us to get that number of 103 permits issued? What have people written checks for or sent us money However, we've taken it cash, I don't know.
Not overnight, but yes, we'll give
Okay.
it.
So maybe,
It was easier and council used to see it every month, the number of permits and values and. Those were the two big things you saw was the number of values. The number of permits and the values issued. You're wanting to see, one of the things that I've already talked with Renee about too is, and again, this ties into. Filing by property. So for every permit, we should be tracking not only what we collect, but the expenditures that are offset by that.
Mhm.
That's a manual tracking kind of thing. Not something that's gonna come out of a specific program unless somebody creates a software for it.
I know that was something I think we've discussed before, even on the budget stuff. Is just knowing what we're spending and what we're taking in. Trying to just, we know it's not gonna be a wash.
Right.
It's- But it certainly, at least to give us a ballpark, or if we have to increase it for next year or. What we need to be doing there just on the planning side of things.
Mhm.
And then with that. Have we selected accounting software? I know we've talked about that multiple meetings now. Is that been purchased? What's the time frame on that?
It's being built into next year's budget and.
Has it been
um,
purchased or not
no.
yet?
It's in next
guess
year's
it-
budget.
I think that's what we talked about, gonna try to fire up by the first of the year, correct?
Right,
Yeah, it's at the-
So if we buy it next year, we won't have it ready and up and running by the first of this upcoming year. When do we think?
there are two different things. One is just software purchase itself.
Mhm.
One is also preparing to do that
Correct.
transit. So there's money that I anticipate spending. And part of it will come out of this budget. For this year and then part for next year in terms of making that whole transition work.
Cause we'll have the purchase of the actual software. So the purchase of the software happens this year yet?
Probably.
So that'll happen out of this budget.
Out of this budget, and
So
so
we
by
could-
January, we should be on. The new fiscal year and transitioned into the new software.
I'm hoping that's the,
If it's out of
that's the
this
plan.
plan, if it's out of this budget, which line does it come out of? Well, these got line items or,
Mhm.
so it's not gonna come out of salaries and wages, so it's gonna
Let's see.
maybe some of the time to set it up, I imagine, but.
No, given this,
With the actual software. I guess
well,
I
and
think-
given this chart of accounts, it probably fall into miscellaneous, because I'm not particularly interested in setting up whole new chart of accounts in this system. I'm preparing the chart of accounts for the next one. That's gonna have, more definition in some areas and less in the others.
So then with the wages and salary, so that 71.4, would that then get dispersed among some of these others before the end of the year? Is that what you're saying?
It's
I
first
think,
among-
I think the 71,000, roughly 500 was what was budgeted to go to us, to the planning and zoning
that
budget.
includes part of yours, yeah.
Right, so it's 20% of Sunny, X% of Renee, some of,
0.7.
Kane and.
0.75 of the public, or of the project specialist.
Right, and then part of Kane, so it was estimated that would be 71.5 about. What we've spent is just over 9,000.
But we wouldn't be,
But we are missing the 0.75 salary of the project specialist, so that's part of that discrepancy.
And we haven't used our city staff to do enforcement, so like Kane and company haven't been doing enforcement, so. If I'm understanding, that is also,
so Sonny, in terms of, know, you said software would come out of miscellaneous,
Given this chart of accounts.
given this chart of accounts. Cause really, we only have $500 in there. Okay.
That's our budget.
They
For
better-
miscellaneous.
Yeah.
But
And again, I mean, you're talking software that's gonna be, you know, across the
Across the
board
board,
used for
coming
all
out
the
of-
departments and
Okay,
so.
so it's not just coming out.
No,
Okay,
no.
$500 is
No.
good.
Okay, I was.
A little bit allocated from ours, a little bit allocated from.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's, okay, got it.
Yeah,
It's an entire city, across the city function and not
Right.
just P and Z.
We don't have a separate
Property
accounting
based.
department budget.
We don't have a line item yet. We kind of do, but kind of
no,
not.
we have a finance department that has some too. But in terms of going back to your point too, is remember, I did implement that I felt you guys should be paid something, and so that's in there
You all,
as well.
You all.
not me.
Not him.
No. No,
that'd be
just
double
to
dipping.
clarify, when you say y'all is singular, you all is plural.
Oh, all of y'all is plural. Y'all is single.
So I hesitate to have you get too bogged down in
Right, I'm
this
just-
stuff, I'm just,
Want to make sure I know what we're doing here, and for me, I think it's just what FTE currently is zoning and what does that FTE do?
I think we've kind of hammered it.
Yep,
what I really wanted you to see was on page 15. Where I actually pulled those numbers out to help less skew because of, and we're still working to do some journal entries that will move some of those things into the other funds where they belong. So in
Wow, thank you.
essence, that's probably the port. And again, that requires exporting the previous page report from page 15 to Excel and then pulling those numbers out.
So basically, we have spent 2,300 in reimbursable engineering fees and only $42 in reimbursable legal fees. Right?
Sorry, Mike.
Right here.
What page are you on?
That's the percentage.
Oh,
Oh,
this is our,
Still on page 13, right?
or are we at,
on page 15.
Page 15, the far right
Highlights.
column, it's percent of budget that we've spent so far this year.
I think
Right,
we,
this is percentage of your budget, so and this was unencumbered. So we only budgeted 5,000.
For reimbursable legal fees, we budgeted 5,000, we have spent. Says year to date actual, but then the unencumbered that's my understanding, what's left if we were to have an expense. So we've got 42% of our budget we've already spent this year. If you read across that center line,
okay, yeah.
that's highlighted yellow. The question I would have actually is for any budget, when I see negative dollars,
Mhm.
that's where I wonder, did we not budget correctly at the beginning of the year, or what happened that we are seeing bigger expenses that we did not anticipate? So we know for budgeting for next year what to watch. So I see negative on salary and wages is where it's at, but I see just below that employee health benefits and care contribution, but they're all at zeros. So we've been negative spending there. I'm guessing that relates back to salary and wages. Because we did account for payroll taxes and that we're looking pretty good year to budget.
Mhm.
Planning services, we're about half. The engineering fees though, and that would be, I'm assuming some of the fees that we pay to Stantec and others.
Mm.
And so it looks like that's a number we might want to see bumping up next year, but again, we don't know how much we brought in from the 103 permits that could potentially offset part of that, not all of that, I'm sure.
How much that engineering fees is related to water and sewer.
Yeah,
You know, it's-
And that's at the bottom of at the bottom of that page. You're looking at page 15.
Okay,
The adjustments, so the total for year-to-date actual spent. Your budget was 124. You spent 151, but of that 151, I'm pulling back out that 115 for engineering that belongs in the wastewater treatment project.
Okay.
Pulling out 2,100 of legal fees.
that's
And-
legal fees at 2,100.
And then what's
Yes,
SEH?
and then the 2,000 plus change for the Zumbro River Trail project being paid to SEH, which is another engineering firm.
That's the.
So-
so the lines that are not highlighted though right now are the zoning ones. And the ones that are highlighted are the ones that you've pulled out that are related to
Yes.
projects outside of our purview here.
They're all
So what-
reimbursable. right?
So what you've actually spent, the budget of 124, whatever,
Mhm.
you've actually spent less than 32,000.
31,661.
31,6. And part of that is we've got money for the RFP that we had thrown out there.
But I don't think that wasn't built into this budget.
Well, we had talked about budget numbers last year. We talked about budget numbers this
That
year.
was.
Yeah, I thought it was too. Well, that was one of my first meetings was we talked budget.
Yeah,
But again, we were talking about just an RFP for planning, just
Mhm.
planning purposes, not this redoing the whole code book kind of that expansive,
Mhm. Mhm.
that the RFP is now doing that. So,
So when I do look at these numbers that do belong, keeping in mind planning and zoning is not gonna run directly even. We still have where we didn't calculate correctly for the salaries and wages just underneath that line, the health benefits, the contribution, payroll taxes, looks like we calculated fairly well. The rest, planning services, okay. Engineering fees, that next one, we're quite a bit over on that, but we have had quite a few applications this year.
Mhm.
And so
Yeah.
maybe when we look at how many applications we've had as well is something we wanna keep in mind each year. Get a number where we ended up and
And this year
we
we
could
had
start to trend, see which way that trends. I'm assuming it's gonna continue to trend up and I just like to not be surprised by year end by.
Right.
Well, a couple of
And-
comes engineering fees, that's such kind of passed forward anyway.
Right, well, and there's some engineering fees. I won't mention the name, but that we're not gonna get reimbursed for. Right?
And there's always
So the
been a
case,
some.
there's the case workup. For the one, and
But
that's quite an extensive case workup. And we didn't really get anything, right?
Well, and that goes back to what are we charging for our fees, because we know our fees that we're charging don't cover the full
Right.
cost of stuff. But we also don't see and hear what amount we've taken in this
Right.
year. Correct? That we've said that's not on here right now, but it sounds like it's something we could see maybe for next month.
well, again, I'm gonna say these monthly reports that I give to this body and the other committees and commissions, the chart of accounts is not set up to allow me to show the revenues attributable to Department 41910, which is planning and zoning.
So if we get the list of permits and applications, is that something we could have a dollar amount on that particular list? Even though it doesn't line up with a line on the budget, we'd at least have an idea. If we're,
But again, that's a new task that you're asking of staff. So I'm
I
saying,
think we've been asking for how much we brought in for multiple meetings, so. But
I know, I mean, my struggle here is we talk about trying to be conscious of how much we're spending, but then we are also asking an awful lot of staff. And I'm guessing other committees are also asking a lot of staff, which is money that we're spending. So the question is, what is a reasonable amount of staff time?
Well, and that's where I'm trying to figure out
Well,
what FTE and what
yeah,
they're
but-
doing and.
And my, okay, one, the 2023 budget was my first budget with Orinoco. So yeah, did we miss plugging in numbers for the health benefits and the parent contribution? Yep, that's why you got goose eggs. Now you got a negative number. But here's the thing that one of the things that as city administrator, I wanted city council to do was to be able to be counselors and not be bogged down with inserting themselves into the city management kind of stuff. Much the same with, I'm gonna ask this group is to not get so bogged down with the financial piece of it when your role really is more overseeing city code and the planning and zoning issues versus the financial stuff. I'm not gonna create work for staff I don't even have on site yet. I'm gonna give you as much information as I possibly can. I'm gonna try and honor the requests that you want, but at the same time, just a little grace, please, because it's, and you may or may not have heard, the city is under another lawsuit. So we had 20 days and that 20 days is coming up rather quickly. I'm extremely stressed, not only by that issue going on, but also we're in the midst of the budget for next year. We've got a deadline coming up on that. We've got the RFP out. We've got questions coming in on that. We've got, I need to let my staff, Renee last year didn't get to use, have time off or anything. I'm affording her that, because she's earned it. And so it's not like I have full-time staff all the time. We're all seriously doing the best we can, but there are some issues beyond just what planning and zoning wants. And that's not to minimize the requests that you're making, either via email or in this meeting or previous meetings. I'm just saying that we don't have the staff right now. We'll get there. But
Would that
space
also-
is an issue as well.
I know last month we did also talk about clean year out next month. Having Renee present at this meeting so that she could train in on doing minutes. And you were going to have Renee come. So
I don't know that I committed Renee to the meeting. I said that was an
Or
option.
something.
She wants to, I'm gonna say, she did want to do planning and zoning more, until she came to the meeting when I was in Jamaica. And then maybe rethinking that. And, because none of us wants to come to a meeting where we are, made to feel like we're not doing the best that we can. That the materials, the applications, the processes that we've inherited suddenly are all bad and need to be checked out the window, and planning and zoning people need to come in and fix everything. That's That's not fair to staff.
Yeah, but honestly, Sonny, I don't think, and I'm not gonna get into that. I don't. I didn't see it that way. In all fairness. To planning and zoning, and I know there were some questions, there was ideas. And, you know, and we tried to make it very clear, hey, nobody's blaming Renee. You know, this was something that happened.
But
So
I think what we're looking for here though too is not. We need somebody to help Colleen, so she can be an active participant and not
Right.
having to focus on typing. We want her expertise that she's got.
And
And that
is-
was the discussion
and
last
that
month
is
to
the goal.
have
That
somebody
is the
here
goal.
for next month so they could start taking
But
minutes.
Colleen sure
Yeah.
felt relieved last.
And
month
that
when
was
she heard-
why this month was
heard
gonna be kind of a train in with Colleen.
I
But
I
there's-
guess I didn't understand that, but also, why would you have a secretary?
Sometimes I've seen secretaries where they will do the signature or the mailing or the different things. When I was on township, we did actually have somebody else from the county that did our minutes for us and all the. We did not have one of the actual people on the board. Now, I don't know if that's changed or different cities and different towns do different things, but
No, because, are you talking about Orinoco Township?
when I was in the township.
Okay,
And that was
Orinoco
years ago.
Township hires
They have-
Olmsted County
Yep,
to
to
do
do
all their
their-
stuff.
yep.
So you're paying for it, one way
Right.
or the other, and just like that would.
And
be
that's where
here,
I'm
because
asking
it's kind of-
what's going into our budget and what's our FTE, because I certainly want you to be able to participate and join in on
Yeah.
these more,
Yeah.
not that you're not, but it's a different focus when you're also trying to keep minutes.
Well, you know, and also on top of that, or alongside that, you know, we're all city residents and we see the numbers and like to know where the money goes.
Right.
No,
And-
Absolutely.
Transparency is important.
Yeah, and I guess in my comment to that, you know, Sonny, I totally understand what you're going through with other things happening in the city. Back to the numbers, you know, to your comment about us getting bogged down. I just want to be clear, I don't look at it as that we're bogging down into it. It's just understanding how much money is this body spending? How much money is this body taking in? You know, and I don't know any other way to do it. than-
Well, and
than to
again,
see it.
And if we're
You
supposed to
spend-
make recommendations on changes for fee structure, if we don't have those two numbers, it's really difficult to do.
Right,
We're
yeah, so,
probably,
and, yeah, it's not, to me, it's. I don't think it should be looked at as micromanaging or, you know. Treading on water that we shouldn't be, cause I think we should know. As another. Governing body or whatever we wanna categorize it as. Of the city to understand, okay, cause this is a body, what are we using? Or what are we spending? What are we bringing in? What do we need? You know, so if we know that we don't have the budget. For something, we know we can't make a recommendation to buy it.
it's almost like we need that project specialist yesterday. Come in and do the software and get it set up.
Yeah.
Then take a
Oh,
look.
that
then-
wasn't the project specialist, that,
No,
the
the-
project specialist.
You know, we need a project specialist to come in and get it done and get it in place.
Yeah.
If it's, you know,
Well,
Right.
well, and I'm just looking at the time and knowing that we spent an awful lot of time. So my point was really intended to convey that I understand the information you want. I'm giving you more information than Mass Planning and Zoning Commission's got. I will say, there's no disrespect, my friend. There's really not training to do minutes, so it's not like,
We
like
just
I
type.
need to bring somebody in, you just need the time.
So, so I'll just ask the question. Do you want someone else to do minutes? Or are you good with doing minutes?
I don't mind doing
Not to put you on
minutes,
the
but
spot.
I think that
You
that,
enjoy doing minutes.
I don't think anybody enjoys doing minutes.
As a volunteer, do you enjoy doing minutes or do you think somebody who is a paid city employee.
I don't think it's a good use of city money to pay somebody to come here and take minutes. But that's just me. I don't want my taxpayer money going to that. But
And
that's
then
me.
maybe you join the discussion and maybe Sunny, you help take the minutes while we are here since you are a non-voting member of this body. And that would assist as well.
She just bought a
Okay.
computer.
No, I didn't even buy a computer, yeah, it works.
But you know,
But, Sunny
And
also
even if-
provides,
Yeah,
Brags
right,
about
the other piece that could happen is the words always, the minutes could be looked at from the recording too. Pulled from there, but I just
And
want you to be able to participate.
right,
so.
and you're right, we could pay a city staff member to watch 4 hours worth of planning and zoning.
Or be here and take them while they're here. And then it's easier to ask for clarification. But it's, I know
Like
Wendy
I
had
told
mentioned
you
it last
her-
month that it's important for her that you are able to participate,
Right,
so.
personally, I think that it's not a good use of my taxpayer money to pay a staff member to do that. That's what I think when you agree to be a member of a commission and to take on a role of secretary, that's what you agree to do. And, Paul Janetto used to do all of it. He chaired and minutes.
Mm-hmm. It's a lot of work.
So.
and I think in part of it is, how detailed. But, so I guess I look at it this way. If you're fine with it,
I am fine with it because.
I say we be fine.
as long as-
Taxpayer money
as long as
going
we're-
to it.
As long as she's
And I'll
patient,
cover
let's
for you
trying
while you-
to make them. more
That's right.
efficient.
Okay,
Okay, let's move-
All right.
let's move on.
Moving along.
Wonder.
We're through accounting and
I said
financial,
wonder.
yes. Any more questions
Yes,
on
please.
financial reports? We do have new business. We have a couple things left here. New business revising lot sizes. Commissioners will recall that this issue was previously discussed in July of 2022. So this is page 17 of your packet. And there are a number of items in here.
You've all seen them, I think, before.
So there were examples and areas of lot sizes. And it goes through page 25 of the packet.
Vice Chair, if I may, I point out that, yes, we did talk about this before. We, had information on what, and I think, oh, there's Erin. Erin,
I'm still here.
you actually the one to present these other lot sizes last year?
I was not the one that presented them, no, but if there's anything that you want me to go over in the packet, I certainly can.
Okay, so the issue really is, and this is kind of how we are dealing with things, right? We get an application. It's kind of like what we've been thinking about, but haven't acted on yet. And so here we are. So we do have an application that's looking for some less than, a lot split that's looking for a remainder site that's going to be less than the 20,000 square feet, so. I offer a couple of different options for recommendation, if you can reach a consensus on these revised lot size. Then I'd recommend that we move ahead with an October 12th planning public hearing, and then it can get resolved at the council level on October 17th. If you need more time to consider materials that are over a year old and you want more research, then we can have Stantec do more research. And then we can push it down to November, but I would like to see this resolved.
Is there a problem? Something resolved, usually a problem, that's why.
Oh, okay. Well, only that we've been talking about it for over a year.
Of lot size changes?
It's been through. No,
You're
under
referring-
consideration.
Referring back to one of the deals with the garage. That you're talking about.
Oh, that was a
I see.
different issue.
For
but
me, one of the things that's confusing in this is actually midway through here, this one. You guys-
Page,
Page one.
It doesn't have a page number for me on that corner, but let me count.
Or what's the previous?
22.
Page 20.
Page
22.
Okay.
And just the logistics of it, so I can see the existing on the left. And the replat, and it's just a concept here, but. To me, I'm still trying to wrap my head around. The concept of putting new roads in. Replatting it. How that would work with the existing homeowners, for me, I think I need probably one more month on this before I would.
Yeah, could I speak to that page?
Yes, please.
Sure. Yeah, I discussed this with Phil today, actually, and so certainly take some time with it, but that he drew this out just to show the potential for how additional lots could fit in if, say, a developer or the current property owners wanted to do a subdivision. So this is certainly not something that is pending or whatever, but it could happen if, say, a developer bought all the lots and wanted to do something new. And this is based on a minimum lot size of 12,000 square feet. Again, just as an example to show that no matter how you adjust your minimum lot size, whatever sizes you come to consensus on, we should consider that there's the potential for some subdivision of existing neighborhoods if the owners wanted to do that.
And I could see some of the larger lots where. And I don't want it piece by piece, but I could see individual owners coming through with their larger lots and wanting to split them. Potentially not in this beautiful layout, in a more awkward layout, but I certainly can see that happening. And that's the concept, that if there's a third option to look at, that's the one that would probably speak to what my questions are in my head
And I
on how
guess-
this would work.
One of the questions I would have is, would we propose this anywhere? Or would we propose it, in regards to like the future land use plan? In certain areas, maybe the lot sizes would be as recommended. And other areas, maybe not.
I think at page 25 is, the historic
Oh, yeah.
downtown would be 6,000, intermediate areas 8, and outer areas 10.
All right, I missed this one.
And which
Yeah,
is,
if I could speak to that too, that's on the very last page of the handout on this. And I think the idea would be that you would potentially create new zoning districts that would have different minimum lot sizes, something like the scale that you're seeing here. And you could decide where to implement those zoning districts. Phil created the concept on the page right before the last one that showed perhaps some logical areas where you might rezone lands, given that, for example, in the downtown, you already have lots that are a lot smaller than 20,000 square feet.
Right. And would it change, like our color coding here, or, you know? No, okay, I'll blow it up here. Do you know, would that cause a change in the future land use plan in terms of these different areas, or was it within the future land use plan? Was it overlaid on top of that, or would there have?
Yeah. I think I'm not, I didn't read your comprehensive plan, so I don't know exactly what density is contemplated in your future land use plan, but I imagine that it would probably warrant amending your future land use map also, because right now you've got this large yellow area over pretty much all of the residential except for multifamily. And if you're going to start separating them by densities, you might make that large yellow area a little bit more differentiated.
Right. Okay. Yeah, because it looked like it was maybe warranting a change.
This is just broke down into 12,000 square foot lots, and this, you're taking 3 property owners and saying, hey, you wanna replant your property? That's doing, kind of like, really? I don't think that's a big plan that they bought their house.
So, but I mean, I think, so. Right now, I mean, I have 2 lots, the one doesn't have any buildings on it. Hypothetically, I think if I'm calculating this correctly, I might split the lot that doesn't have anything on it into 2 or 3, but that wouldn't make any sense if there's really not road access to it. So, you know, like the, you know, Phil's just really rough idea there on the replat concept for discussion only. If, you know, that owner up in the upper left corner on the existing lot really would only be able to divide it into 2, at least initially, until there was a road built anyway, because you have to have frontage.
Yeah.
So, I mean, you're not talking necessarily about requiring everybody in that area to do anything beyond just saying, well, that if we had that property in a zoning that would allow it to divide it, right?
Or what if you have some of those more interior ones that are not with the edge of the road that are even bigger parcels and they want to divide? Now, can you set it up so you've got 2 skinny narrow ones with long driveways? You know, I don't know.
I mean, most things say you have to have a certain amount of frontage.
Right.
Yeah.
That's a question. I don't know how that would work on some of those.
So,
You have to have access,
Right.
their ingress, egress.
And I think, what Phil is showing here too, in terms of, and what Kathy, you've talked about is if there's a developer that's going to start amassing these different parcels
That
and
makes a
putting
lot
them
of
together,
sense, but
then the developer is also going to be the one responsible for
For
putting in
building
the
roads.
infrastructure and roads.
Right, what developers could come and buy up all of Woodsview and do something like that? with
yeah,
them?
I think that's a
Concept,
less likely,
concept.
right.
Also say it's not very likely,
but it's a less likely scenario. And if we're trying to think of what's really gonna happen in the next 5 or 10 years, I think that's less likely. And it's more
Exactly.
likely where you're talking, you know, can you split out something in the back? That's what I think you're gonna have a lot of homeowners looking to do.
Or the application that we already have, and I worked with him to have it withdraw it so that we could address this without being under a clock.
Mhm.
But his daughter really would like to build yet this year, so.
I don't think you're gonna have a lot of landowners wanting to divide their property. I mean, people move out to Orinoco because they wanted the lot.
Or when they're ready to sell, what if they wanted to buy their land?
Right.
And they wanna move, now they can sell their house and an extra buildable lot.
Well, then
That's a different situation and that could come up.
another discussion was also that when we put in city services, that
somebody might want to split a lot off to help cover their expense on theirs. But that would probably be more along the lines of Colleen's down there.
Second
Where somebody,
lot, right.
somebody can always come in the backside or.
Yes,
wherever
now
the
it builds
access
a
is,
lot
and put it
because
in
you
a dri-
don't
and
need
put it in
a
a driveway.
septic tank on it.
Mm.
Right, but
No longer
I have
have a
no
septic
intention
tank.
of selling my lot.
So, yeah,
And I think this really is pretty much an overlay. Cause if you look closely, I think, you know, it is lining up pretty close to, what our historic districts are. It looks like, you know, we've got the historic downtown and we've got, some other areas. The,
Well, I look at our different varieties of town, of the way town is. Then we sitting there looking at Rochester and Stewartville, we're trying to be somebody else. Orinoco's always tried to be its own thing, and like, now we're changing it.
but I could see people coming in for more lot splits, and I see it, that is more likely one-offs.
It's a-
One at a time coming in, I don't see the
I think that's
situation where you've got somebody buying up 14 properties and,
exactly, I think it's gonna be a one,
So-
it's gonna be a big case by case basis.
Yeah.
Yeah,
so for
I
me,
know
those are
some
the
that-
examples.
yeah, I know some that wanna buy up the big ones and
Wow.
put this in,
Yeah,
No, I think,
they're out
yeah,
there.
well,
so I think,
be careful, don't tell BlackRock about it,
do we think we want to have this?
they're doing that.
Do we think we want this as a public hearing next month, or are we leaning towards more October? Or October or November, sorry, month I'm in September right now. It's getting late.
Yeah, I would,
Does anybody lean strongly?
What
one-
year?
oh, please.
1 year. I-
No,
I
I'm
wouldn't-
giving you 60 days, let's get this wrapped.
I wouldn't
I
have a
under-
problem with extending it to the next meeting.
The discussion and then
The
maybe a
discussion.
public hearing in November.
Yeah. Yeah, cause I think it's something we definitely wanna do, cause we've been talking about this for,
Since the day I showed up, you guys.
yes,
had
well,
to-
even
been
way,
longer
even
than
way
that.
before
I'm
that.
sure
'cause
It's
we-
been longer.
Yeah, cause we talk when water and sewer comes in, normally a lot of cities shrink their lot sizes.
Yeah.
You know,
And that also helps pay for the cost of the water and
Right,
sewer, and my
right.
understanding is that was calculated in, is there will be some lots.
That's
right,
like the
and some people want the small lots and live in town,
You know, that's, that lot across from.
maybe not here.
The open field across from the storage sheds to the east,
Oh, yeah, yeah,
that's all platted, isn't it? That has the
Is it?
streets and roads, I think it is.
oh, there's a street through there.
That,
Corey Allen.
when you go south of Pat Hall's place, that big apartment house, that driveway is a
whole-
road that goes all the way through there.
All right past Trish's,
And there's a road goes between Trish's too.
yeah,
Along
that goes out to
uh,
Corey's field.
Yep. It goes to the east through there, you don't see it.
Yeah.
And there, I think the abandoned road that goes past Kevin McDermott's. Between his house and.
Yeah, that would have to go,
That goes
through
from
the hill.
Minnesota Avenue over the hill. Not that much of a hill, but yeah, it would go straight through there.
So the one though, the concept where you've got somebody buying up a bunch of property, that makes sense, but I think for me, I also wanna. It would help me visualize if I could see. You know, more of what we're talking about, which is what I think our reality is truly gonna be for the most part.
I could see that lot that I was talking about, that, I could see it getting broke up into small lot. Nobody lives on it except there's a house in each corner of it.
Well, and it may be that you want to consider phasing this too, right? So we know that historic downtown is already made up of smaller sites. Maybe we just want to codify what those any lot splits being contemplated are gonna fall into.
Well, I think you
And
just
then,
can't pick
you
a
know-
minimum size lot that it's gonna be and. If somewhere,
well, do you see a future though where? Like even some of the outer areas become. More concentrated housing with more park around it
I
or
think
something?
the area closer to the one interchange we have is gonna become busy, and I could see that eventually. I know we talked about it when we looked at the future land use plan, where right now. It literally just says on the one page, larger lot sizes and the 3 dots are future parks, but we've also talked where we need to do something because right now on our future land use plan, we have only city service or public and institutional zone for future use. It's all on the right-hand side of the road primarily. And I do think we're gonna have to, at some point, look at having at least the blue dot on the left side of the highway as well, because we do know we're gonna have to have public infrastructure over there as well at some point. So at a minimum, our land use plan should have a blue dot on that side of the highway someplace. But when you start talking about that, then you look at, does that make sense with our density that we've got around there? So I do think there's a little bit of work we could be doing on the future land use plan map.
I mean, you can tie it again to the R1, R2, R3, or however you're gonna do it, R1. Without having it be, called historic downtown, intermediate and outer. And so you could zone some of the outer stuff R1 if it I guess you don't want it too much outer to be real small, unless it sort of makes sense with how it flows, but
And the historic downtown that
already,
is already that way for the most part, but maybe I like the idea of let's bite that little chunk off first. Maybe codify that, get it into code, and then take the next area and work on that. And we'd end up with probably public hearings and we'd have some people coming in to talk pro and for and against what they think they would want, but that's probably going to be for us one of the easier ways to chunk that one out and get it done.
Okay.
So maybe more discussion on it for next month.
The application, I will tell you, is right over here on the second. So there's already the infrastructure's there and it would need another user, water and sewer user. So, talking about.
Another whack and sack.
Yeah.
Yep. Okay. Anything more on revising lot sizes or we will move on to old business?
I'm sorry. Can I get then a motion for you if you want to? Is that the plan? Do you want to hold off on setting the public hearing or can we do that now and I can get it on the calendar for November?
Let's move the discussion to the whole.
Maybe whole thing, you want to table the whole thing till?
I would,
Table.
the
I'd
discussion.
like
for
to
next
table the
month.
whole thing before
Till October.
and then if we have a public hearing, do that in November.
Yeah, so in October, we'll make the public hearing
We'll make it
determination.
effective date, yeah. Don't see any reason.
motion to table.
Or to continue our table for today and
The
continue our
motion, the
discussion.
motion is to continue the discussion into our October meeting with the possibility of setting a date for a November public hearing. That'd be my motion. Unless somebody else already had it on the table.
Sure. I'll second it.
All right,
Thank you.
old business, getting closer.
You want to call for a vote? I'm sorry.
Oh, yes, we'll do that. Obviously tired here. So we've got a motion on the table, a first and a second for that. To move our lot size discussion, if I'm paraphrasing that, to next month with the potential next month of scheduling a future public hearing. You've got the exact verbiage there.
Motion to continue the discussion of revising lot sizes in the October meeting with the possibility of holding a public,
Possibility of setting a time frame for a public hearing.
okay, possibility of setting.
A time for a public hearing.
All right, and there's a second? That was you? Perfect. All in favor? Aye. Opposed?
That I snuck it in there.
Well, you're the in the hearing.
All right.
You're
She typed it in there.
Thank you.
She typed it in.
So, we are now done with new business, on to old business. First thing we have for old business is an update on our RFP for planning services. And Sunny, you did include a memo on that, the very last page of our packet. So we did go through the RFP last time, page by page, bullet by bullet. Had specific sections and we went down to the words where change this word or do that or add a paragraph in. We had received it and went through it. Consensus was that we were good to go, and we did talk about timeframes as well to get that published and distributed. So we did get that. Wendy and I took the changes from the commission. We did update those exactly as was spec'd out in the meeting. We did send you, Sunny, a PDF as well as the masters to get that posted. And the date, the working date that came out of that meeting that everyone had agreed to and you had agreed to after was the 22nd. And we did not get it out by that time. And when it did get pushed out, it was considerably different than what we had all reviewed. In fact, I had not seen the changed version and Wendy had not seen the changed version. Was the changed revised version sent to City Council, Sunny, for their review?
No.
Okay. So it didn't go back to anybody on zoning, it didn't go back to anybody in the city, and there were some pretty good changes that were made to the RFP.
How would you define those, please?
I would say there were changes in the pull up the RFP. I noticed Wendy was to have been notified of items going out. Wendy should have been on the list of if there were questions coming in, so she would get copies of the questions as chair. And she was completely removed from the RFP. So there were some definitely significant changes. The makeup of the group doing the reviewing was also revised. So the RFP, I think, I'm hoping we still end up getting the proposals. I did see you included in here a list of specific places that it did get posted though, because that was also one of the requests. So it did get posted on the League of Minnesota Cities website, which is what we had requested. That came from with Wendy there. Because it's one thing to have an RFP, it's another thing if you put one out there and nobody knows it exists. So we want to make sure that people are aware. Do you know when that was actually posted to League of Minnesota Cities? Or did you didn't CC Wendy, or did you CC Wendy when that was done?
No, because it's
It's through their web portal.
It's through their web portal. I don't remember.
Okay.
I'm sorry. But we had changed the date to the 28th, and you'll recall I had the migraine the previous week. And that did take some time out.
So and then you did, by invitation, you were able to get that League of Minnesota Cities vendor list, because I know I sent you the link of, they have vendors there that they do list. So when did those vendors get contacted? When?
I don't have that information in front of me.
Is that something that'd be easy to grab quick, the same way the FTE numbers were?
Is that important, or is the more important part of it that we're getting responses?
That was my next question. So when were they contacted, and have we heard from that first 6?
I have had, okay, so if I can speak to my number. You'll note that it was posted on the city's website. It was posted on the league site. And from that, we got one specific request in addition to the 12 that were there. And then I have also sent out another one by invitations, personal invitation that I missed putting on there. But they are also partnering with one of the others that that was listed, so
Who's that one? So the person, you said you had a personal invitation? Is that one that's listed or you're saying it's not listed?
all those six, it would be number 7 by personal invitation.
Who's that one for?
That's WSE,
WSB, that's number 6 on here,
no, WSE,
WSE.
which is different than WSB.
Is that on the LMC list or the other list?
No, that's by personal invitation.
The
I
second
mean, you
list-
forget, I've been in public sector service for 16 years, so I know some people.
WSE,
Okay.
that's what I heard.
Okay.
Now, who's WSE? Of course, I don't know any of these except for Stantec and a couple of WSB as well. Does it no matter?
So I have had one firm, that has indicated that due to their workload, they are declining an option.
Is that one of these? Is that one of these?
I can't tell you which one it was, I'm sorry, I didn't. And then I've had two that have reached out to me personally, and indicated that they appreciate the thing and appreciated the personal invitation. We'll see if they respond or not. I've had 2 that have responded with questions, and I apologize because I was gonna send those or bring them with me tonight because it might be something that the group wants to talk about. So I will send that out to everyone, and that's how, because you serve as a group. So unless as a group you want to delegate that the task be entirely assigned to, I guess there are only 4 of you here tonight to vote on that anyway, but to a smaller group, but can do that as well.
But the ones, Sonny, you said 2 of them reached out personally. Did you say to decline? Or
No.
Oh.
They're interested.
Oh, okay.
They appreciated me
Okay.
thinking of them. And it was not, and it wasn't, and that's the conversation, was more about, thank you for reaching out to them. It wasn't specifically about the RFP, it was about personal relationship.
So WSE, is that WSE Massey?
Yep.
Yep.
Thank you.
That Bill Clayton?
That is Bill Twain. In part. Right?
Yep.
Not all.
So we got it out there on the 28th. We had a holiday weekend in there, and we've asked inquiries to come into the city by the 13th, which was yesterday by 3 o'clock. So have we gotten specific inquiries that we need to answer? You said
That's what I'm
that
talking about,
there's a
those
couple.
2 with specific questions. One of the biggest, both asked the same question. What's your budget for this?
Your proposal.
Yeah.
Um,
We're not telling you our budget. We're asking you for a bid. If you want to be a part of this, you submit
Yeah,
numbers. That's not the way it works.
I'm not gonna
so we
bid against
do
myself.
have on our,
this is my first
RFP.
rodeo.
yep, response to any inquiries posted on or before 11 a.m. on September 22nd. So that's coming up in about just over a week there.
So that the only date that really changed was the disbursement date.
That's the 28th, you mean?
Yeah, we gave them less time to think about putting together a proposal or getting us questions. Hopefully they are reading through it, looking at it. depending on what those questions are, I would say. I mean, obviously, if they're budget related, that's one thing, but if it's something speaking to a specific item on the RFP. That's probably something that we would want to weigh in on.
Mhm.
Or have council take a look at, because you guys would have time before that 22nd to take a look at that.
Mhm.
And so maybe sitting on council as a zoning rep as well, that might be something that Sunny, you figure out those questions, maybe draft a response, and then the potential response is something that council should consider. Submissions are due by October 2nd. And then we do have interviews to get lined up for the week of October 9th. There was one date in the week of October 9th, I believe Wendy had blocked that she was busy. And we'll have to just look at last month's report and we can figure that date out.
Overnight, that's a Friday,
Yeah.
October 9th is Friday. No,
No, I thought it was a Monday. It's a Monday. There was one date that week that Wendy, I know, was not unable. So we'll just have to figure that one out, and then depending on what we've got for proposals that come in on the 2nd. By the 2nd, get those out so we can review them. And then come in for the interviews on the 9th. Starting that week.
So you said interview should begin when?
The week of October 9th.
So that was for interviews.
So the ones that do give us submissions, set those interviews up. And then by the end of that week, we would have gone through the interviews. We should have already been able to review the proposals prior. Come up with that subgroup. And provide a recommendation that can go to council for council consideration. Is October 17th the date of the council meeting?
And remember, the 9th is a holiday.
So we'll be down to 3 days for the week, probably.
What's the holiday?
Halloween.
Oh,
No, it's
It's Indigenous
Peoples' Day.
it's what?
Indigenous
Columbus
Peoples'
Day,
Day.
Oh.
Indigenous Peoples' Day.
That's the
Okay,
Mhm.
when they change that?
So we've got, so that week is what we've got, looking at potentially 3 days that week then. So once we do that, council can get our recommendation. And is it the 17th is their meeting?
Yes.
Okay. And then the next day after council would hopefully approve or give us their decision, contract negotiation would begin then the next day with the project. Hopefully kicking off in 4th quarter, because we know we've got a lot of work to do before water and sewer finishes up. We'd like to get some of that code cleaned up. Questions? Does that work, do you think, to draft up any responses that might be necessary and get those to council? Do they need to go to council? Do they go to Wendy as chair to approve?
What?
I mean, what's one, if there's something that's specific to one of the items in here?
Does the chair have that kind of power?
Well, it's kind of hard to guess at what the questions it might be and guess on what the answers might be when other than it sounds like maybe budget ones. If there was anything that was specific that wasn't budget related, those would be the ones we'd want to know about.
Right, but I would guess the chair of planning and zoning has no more authority than the mayor to make a proclamation, so.
Well,
it
it's
should
a
go
response.
before a group if you want to talk.
Well, and
about
that's why the
that's
city
why-
administrator issued the RFP because that's appropriate. Let me,
But I could see where that could go to council. And you guys could approve the submission or the answers to whatever questions they might be, and then it gets posted out there for everybody. Yep, that's what I'm looking at.
And are we gonna get the
Well, and
the
that's,
response?
okay, here's okay. This is coming from HKGI, Worthington Kegler. The RFP references development interest related to an upcoming major infrastructure project. Does the 2020 future land use map available on the city's website identify these areas and what type of future land use is desired? Now, see, that's an issue that, in terms of, I mean, that's gonna take a Stantec, in my view, to show where that infrastructure is all laid out, and how that affects the existing future land use map that we have.
Well, and
That's also kind of one, and correct me if I'm wrong, Kathy, but it's one of the things that we're asking them to help, right?
well, it's
As
one of the
part of
things
the
we
illustrative.
pointed out
things.
previously that the future land use map was a new date was slapped on it and a little bit of change was made because we're putting in water and sewer, but we really go back to 2001 on really more of an in-depth look at it. And so I believe that would be part of what we are looking to see. that
Have
would
them
fit.
do, right?
And I think right now it does not fit with what some of our future needs are gonna be.
Um,
The water and sewers.
I mean, just the fact that we don't have anything on the west side of the highway for city infrastructure, really, other than that one, is it a pump or whatever? Lift station or something.
There's a well house over there.
Right,
Yeah.
right. So I just, we know there's some changes to make on the future land use plan. We are trying to tap into others' expertise as well.
Out of curiosity, how big is the lot over there? That the well house is on? You know, anybody know?
Not sure.
Where is it?
But
The well house over
so
right there.
read that question to us once more.
It's over
I'm
on
sorry?
Third Avenue.
Read that question to us once more that they sent us.
Thank you. The RFP references development interest related to an upcoming major infrastructure project. Does the 2020 FLUP map available on the city's website identify these areas? And what type of future land use is desired?
So the flood map was slightly updated to include this future infrastructure, but it is not a comprehensive deep dive.
No, because I don't think it even,
No,
I don't think it considered water and sewer either.
no,
The 2001 map?
no, that's 2020.
It's the 2001 map.
Oh,
well, it's from 2020 because that's when they updated it. There's a small change made for water and sewer. But did they look at anything else? No. That is, from what I can gather, when I went back and looked at some of the other historical stuff out there.
And I think, that's going to be hard to even define until you have the community engagement and
Exactly,
the outreach to get the input for that,
right.
which I'm thinking also would be inclusive of the EDA working in conjunction with Planning and Zoning Commission to really kind of ferret out how residential and commercial and any other districts we want to engage are, okay, so,
Here's a you want
no, keep going,
the
because
second part of the
we
question?
haven't even gotten to the second email, which is.
Second part of the question.
This is the second question from them. The RFP references that the comprehensive plan is currently under review. What is the timing for completion of that review, and generally what types of updates are anticipated?
And I think that was pretty well spelled out in terms of it's under review. We kind of want you to help.
Yeah.
Do it.
I
Bring
was
that
just gonna say,
together.
That's what we're asking them.
Yes, so. Okay, so is there one other question?
There are two others. Does the city anticipate having the city code on its website in the same format as it is today?
No,
Okay, and then there's the budget question. And then you said there's another.
Yeah.
Yeah, they shouldn't even ask what budget is. I mean, that's.
Well,
enough.
you just never know.
They-
If you're
they
a
wanted to
contractor,
know.
you might get lucky and somebody will answer.
Well, yeah, they'll, if, you
Not for me. they're-
can't win if you don't play, right?
Yeah.
Well, you know, silliest question, when it wasn't asked.
So,
Yeah.
That's like.
On the other hand, if the city says we don't want to spend more than $5,000, which I know is a ridiculously low amount, but
That's where the contract negotiation. I think what we
why
have to
would somebody put in a lot of effort if they knew,
Well, we know we've gotta have the resources, we know we've gotta make these changes because water and sewer is coming through and. The budget calculations that I've seen for water and sewer depends on the growth of the city
Mm,
going out, and should this not be successful. Then everybody's property taxes are going to go way up, so.
I understand that,
Right.
but if you're the company
Yeah, I'm-
thinking about it, are
I-
you gonna put in?
yeah, I see what you're
I-
saying. They're gonna put a lot of time and effort into
Looking at-
responding, but I think that's a risk they take with anybody bidding a job even, cause you're rolling the dice.
And we do
No matter
put in
what.
there that the cost, whatever their cost is to put this together, we're not responsible for, that was a section.
Mhm.
They'll make that up.
Yep.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
If they think they win.
Not only that, but also included, the reference that there are going to be engineering aspects. That they're gonna have to either partner up with somebody or they are a firm that has both planners and engineers.
If they don't have the resources, do we want somebody partnering up? Because
Depends.
we've run into the problem before of somebody not having the resources to go belly up, and here we're hanging with.
Well, that is
issues
up
and
to us to
development.
make sure we do our interviews well,
Mhm.
Right,
and during negotiations, look
And
at,
background.
look at the health of the
but
companies.
the partnering up thing,
Yep.
if they don't have the resources to start with, they cannot qualify to be
Well,
bid.
I wouldn't,
I'm sorry.
yeah, I wouldn't put anybody out just because they don't have one particular area, there are some
Yep.
very good partners and
If you have
subcontractors.
resources, you're
Well,
good.
Well, the other thing, there's something to be said for having partners. So that you're not ending up with one contractor or one vendor. For indefinite.
Yeah,
I can understand partnering up.
Yeah.
But I think if they're gonna allow somebody to partner up, they should both have the resources available to do the job.
Right. And
Combined,
they
they
may
should.
just have, different strengths or something, but that's.
If not, they should be carrying the bond in case the other one don't.
Whatever their business models might be.
Yeah.
The other
Yeah.
thing is that, I'm sorry, do you wanna?
Do you want the rest, you want these questions?
Yes, let's.
Okay,
hear
this
the other
is
one.
respondent number 2.
It looks like you are talking with the planning commission this week about some of the known code changes that you hope will occur. Can we get a copy of the minutes from that discussion or your list of priorities?
In November.
Well, that's coming up in whole business next, so.
Yeah.
It is clear that your new utility project will bring about change in the community. What types of development pressures are you feeling most right now? Commercial, residential, industrial? Can you share the staging plan that will require properties to hook up to the new city utilities?
That's a
What-
good question.
what do you envision for community engagement for this project? The RFP did outline what was expected, but have you experienced any preferred methods for reaching out to residents?
Good questions.
How does sustainability fit into the city's future and into the new land use regulations? Our company has done a number of illustrative zoning ordinances in the past. Have you seen any specific illustrative ordinance that you really liked and that could be looked to as an example of what you are hoping for in this project? And then, what GIS services will be needed with this project? Will a new zoning map be part of this project? And then finally, your RFP states that the current comp plan is under review. Are you in the process of updating this plan? And then they also had the financial, like, what's your budget question? That was their first question.
Some good
not
questions out of
the
that
last.
one, though.
Mhm. Yeah, those were good questions.
But they are extensive.
That means
Some of
they're
them are
reading
easy.
through it. That's
Mhm.
good.
Mhm.
I know.
That's good.
But
And again, I would like to reiterate that we are happy to be submitting a proposal, so.
I am glad to hear we've gotten some thoughtful questions. A couple gimmies there on the budget, but the rest of them are pretty well thought out on some of those. They're going through and reading it, so.
Alrighty,
So we've got some work to do on that one. We've got prioritizing list of known code changes. We've got the route map. And we also have the next, towards the end there, but next we have posting of the minutes of the P and Z meeting to the website. And this was on old business last month as well.
And I will say that Colleen did send those to me and they just haven't gotten those. Sorry. Renee is out with COVID, it was a week ago and she was back last week and Mary was off last week and now Renee's off again,
So this is,
so
we've got 9 meetings we've had, counting this one this year. And we've got 3 of the minutes out there. So the ones that are, we've got January, we're missing February. We have March, we're missing April, May, and June. And we do have July out there. And July would have been the ones that we approved last month.
so is this something that Colleen can just put up there
I,
when they're done?
I don't have access to the web and probably shouldn't, but I've submitted all the amended ones.
Okay.
Yeah, after they get approved, you submit.
So we
something.
have the February,
After they get amended.
April, May, June, and then we have our draft ones we requested tonight to get published out there, just the draft versions for now. So 5 sets of minutes to get out there. When can we expect to see those? Because we definitely have residents in town that are trying to find them. Even the Facebook groups in town are wondering where minutes are at.
yeah, we saw that one posting last year. Can you remind me of the date you sent those to me, you know? I'll stay here till midnight and get them up there today.
But no, Sunny, is this something that she could get access to, just to drop them in a folder?
No,
Is this something that could be delegated or is delegated, or is it?
I don't know if she wants it, but look at her nice smile.
like I say, we have delegated tasks. But there's been, you know, there,
It looks like I did some on 8/24, 8/23. Something like, yeah, that.
thank you.
So 8/24 and 8/23 minutes were sent to you. You'll look for
No,
those.
8/23, August 23rd and 24th, she sent me the corrected or revised
Minutes.
minutes as approved.
Those are the ones we just,
So they're ready to post.
we haven't approved that.
No, those are the dates of the emails.
Never mind.
Yeah, and so 8:23 and 8:24, I went back and amended the minutes that needed to be amended.
And then July minutes probably then.
So 1, 2, just over, you've had them just over 3 weeks. So when can we expect, you said you'll get those out?
I will post them tonight, Kathy.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And then we had discussion. Prioritizing list of known code changes, so outstanding items from 2022. And then they were included in the 8-10 agenda packet.
That was last month.
Yes.
And I know you've been keeping a list too, so.
I've got to
So could we,
start pulling that together, yeah.
so if we can get a cumulative list perhaps in next month's agenda packet?
Yeah, and then from that, we can start to prioritize what we want to do.
Cause that will be, from, kind of what I'm expecting, them to ask too is what are our priorities as well.
Yep,
So Kathy, are you gonna work on that?
I've got my own personal list. Do we have that as our discussion and finish that off next month and prioritize it too?
Can you build these things in on that?
I can I'll add those 3 to my list and then we'll bring it to next month's meeting to prioritize the list. Flute map update.
I'm sorry,
Oh.
if we could just get that list to include in the packet, so folks can kind of, and maybe you and I can meet, we could talk about. Even if we like group them perhaps, and even if we have to pull from different groups to prioritize. just do
Yeah.
that.
I think if we can come up with at least here's the list and next month prioritize where do we see it? And maybe by then we'll have that list of permits, so we can also see where the pressure is, and maybe you can also just say, here's the discussions. You don't have to say confidential names, but
Right,
here's the inquiries that we're getting, so we know which way some of that is going, because
Yeah.
that's what we really need for the planning side of it.
Yeah.
That helps prioritize.
Yep.
Okay. Anything more on discussion for that one? Or we have the flute map update next. We know we have to update that. There are changes, that's our future land use and planning map. And that's some of the questions that you've gotten. Some are picking up that we've started it, but we know there's more to do and we'd like assistance.
Yeah.
So that's good. I know we've talked about when you're out driving around, check out what other towns are doing, so. Anything more in the flute map update? It's too late to look into any of those zones and discussions right now. Zoning packets. I appreciated getting the paper copy of the packet this month, so thank you.
Yes, thank you.
well, you get it every month.
I know.
But I love that you make that request, that's fine.
Okay.
So for me, if I could just make that a permanent request, that I get a paper copy each month. I like the
Me too.
digital version, but I like to have the digital version, but then I scribble notes on my paper version, so.
It's hard to scribble notes in your digital one.
If I use my pen, that's a little bit of trouble.
You can add me to the list of the paper versions too.
I was raised
ran
by
out of
parents who were in the founding members of the local Sierra Club. I don't believe in burning all this paper, guys.
Recycle.
Do you have a preference for single side or double side?
You're doing fine.
Okay. I kind of, that's why I'll try and mention on the agenda, if something was already, sizable and included before, You can manage your.
I've got my book with my
I think the
packets.
single side works great, especially when we start throwing maps and diagrams, stuff like that.
Oh, yeah.
So you don't get to believe the other side.
Yeah,
I agree.
Absolutely.
and anything more on the zoning packets? Other than that, I think the last item I'm showing then is zoning contact information. Now with that, I know Wendy had asked a couple times, she'd like a list of contact, our zoning and our contact information. And we've written it down and you've talked about bringing it to us or giving it to us in a packet or something, but
That's very.
I know she would like to have,
Maybe not listed in the packet, 'cause that makes it public.
right, but she would like a listing. So if somebody, she wants to make sure everybody can contact her if you can't make a meeting. If
Extra your
there's,
number.
you know, something comes up and for whatever reason, she wants to make sure
So this is just basically
between,
the
commission.
commissioners.
Yeah.
yeah.
Sharing with each other.
Well,
If they want to get a hold of us, they can come through.
and the caution,
We know
for
we
doing
can't do the
that.
email all together as a group. We are aware of that, but it really is I can't make the meeting or I'm gonna be late or,
but they could call City Hall to do that as well.
And that's what they should be doing.
That's right. That's right.
But
but I do
But
think.
I
it's
there's a
important.
but
understand
to
what you're
that.
saying, but.
I say that, but I still think we need the list.
Yeah, I think so
Wendy has
too.
been requesting it.
Chair.
But then does it
Yeah.
become public information?
Yeah, but ours are out on the website. But the reason I'm saying but
Changing my email.
in favor of the list
Correct.
is there's times
Yep.
where I'll get calls from people and they have a question
Public.
I got one
about
tonight.
something. And if it's something I can help them with, or say, call City Hall, you know, and it might even be after hours.
Yeah.
You know,
And I know Paul had he had a zoning email he had created for himself, just a
Mhm.
personal one. That's what he used when he was on zoning as well. Cause when I first was chatting with him about, do you get on or don't you get on? That's where I emailed him, was at his special one he had created just for zoning.
No, it wasn't just for zoning, because he's on other committees too, but
Yeah.
anything Orinoco.
That's
It's an
Orinoco
Orinoco
call,
call.
yes.
Yeah.
But
You could be. Orinoco.
yep, I think that's good.
So-
We need it.
we do need a list of
Or
the contact
clean
information.
or no.
So
One
one way or the other, if we can get that information for Wendy, if she would like that, so. Anything else? I think we've gotten to the list of old business.
So there's only one other
We had
thing.
adjournment there,
Sure.
guys. I would certainly entertain a motion.
I'll make a motion, we adjourn.
Oh, that's your first one tonight.
And he made,
Huh?
he did
Is there a
he
second?
did make the free answer.
All right, thank you very much.
I gotta get a kid picked up here.
All in favor of adjourning I have got the time 9:25. Say aye. Aye.
Who said no?
Anyone opposing? Silent. All right, we're done.
Who
Stop the
said no? Who
recording.
said no? Slap that button.
Get your car sold?
No, yeah.
No?
What are you selling?
Yeah. 2012 Toyota. And only 85,000.